Onyx Storm had to be good for me to have any hope for the rest of the series after Iron Flame. And let me just tell you, she is that girl. Onyx Storm is that girl. The humor, top notch. The drama, actually entertaining and not annoying. The world building, fascinating. Seriously, so much happens in this book. That's why this video is 40 minutes longer than the other 2 recaps of this series. If you like long form recaps like this and want to keep seeing them, please like this video and subscribe. It actually helps a girl out so much, and 80% of y'all that watch my videos are not subscribed. Just hit the button. It's that easy. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and send you to recap Natalie. Enjoy! By the end of this series, I'm just gonna have an entire wall of my house that is filled with their photos to do a recap. I'm gonna be sprinting back and forth to talk about different people. We start this book with Violet following Zaden, who is going to go see Jack Barlow to talk about being a Venin. Zaden's like, how do I cure this? Jack Barlow goes, you're Venin now, and Zaden basically just goes, nuh-uh, I'm gonna find a cure. Violet's listening to them while they talk about all this, and Andara chimes in saying, I can't blame him for wanting to know more about where he comes from. Hint hint, I want to know more about where I come from as the 7th breed of dragon. And Taryn is basically going, ew, Violet, dump him. So now, Violet is cooking up a plan on how to cure Zaden, how to make sure Jack doesn't tell anybody that Zaden came down to talk to him, so she goes to the only 3 people she can trust. Imogen, Garrick, and Bodhi. Cut to 2 weeks later. Violet and her squad are hunting down Venin because after the fight, they weren't able to kill all of them right then and there. So they've still been sending out some squads to hunt them down occasionally and make sure there's none just hiding out in the mountains right now. But after this, she's going to go meet with the King's Council of really important people from all over because they're all here to talk about getting an alliance with Poor Emil, but she also needs to talk to them about going on a mission to find the 7th breed for Andara, and also because they're probably the key to killing the Venin. She's had to wait for this meeting for a bit now, because Poor Emil and Navarre putting their differences aside is like Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively trying to make a movie. It doesn't go well. It ends in fighting. Anyways, our squad is almost done with their patrol when all of a sudden Riddoc's dragon just drops out of the sky because there's a bunch of fog around and almost falls on Violet and Taryn. Taryn has to do this roll spin-in maneuver to get out of the way so they don't all die right then and there. End of book 3, it's 2 pages long. Apparently this all happens because Riddoc, our 21-year-old human, bonded a 21-year-old dragon and they were arguing over something. Everyone's okay, but maybe letting 2 21-year-olds bond each other from even different species is not a good idea. I can only imagine that Riddoc and his dragon met and they just went, did we just become best friends? And then it's been that chaotic energy ever since. They all get down safely. Violet checks in with Taryn before she goes to make sure he's on board with her plan, even if the Imperium isn't the Dragon Court. Y'all, we have no information on the Imperium. I don't know what you expect me to say about them. They're just like these dragon overlords that are ruling over all of us, but Taryn doesn't give a f*** about them. So of course, in true Taryn fashion, he goes, yeah, of course, I'll go along with your plan even though I think it's dumb. But don't let this make you think I actually like Zaden. Our Iron Squad is all walking down when they run into Aura Binehaven, who is there to get the report from their Venin hunting. Now, she is with another guy who makes it very clear that they would honestly rather all of our Iron Squad be dead right now because they're part of the group that stayed at Basgaev, and they view all of them as traitors. Even though our group is the only reason her and her snotty friends are alive right now. So yeah, all the students at Basgaev right now are very tense, but luckily, Devera and Kaori are coming back soon, so please save us, Mom and Dad. Reed then sees Imogen and goes, Cardulo, you missed patrol. Who's Cardulo? Mind you, we have never heard her last name before. Rebecca Yarros in this book just decided to switch it up, have a little fun, and go to everybody's last names for most of the book. Ma'am, I do not know their last names. I was having to decode scenes to figure out whose last name was whose because I don't know. You get used to it by the end of the book, but it is a switch up. Imogen, or Cardulo, or whatever you want to call her, wasn't on patrol because she was babysitting Zaden to make sure he didn't suck any of the magic out of the world. And then to set your magic. She then walks over to Violet to make sure their plan is still intact that will, be seen as treason if they're caught, or it doesn't go right. So, low stakes. While they're talking, in the background, Riddoc freezes a door shut so Ree can't get through. I just need to point this out because this is the start of Riddoc being the star of this book, honestly. Riddoc may just have more main character energy in this book than our girl Violet does. After we refocus on our actual main character, they're talking about how she talked to Garrick and Bodhi, and they're saying that Violet and Zaden should probably sleep in separate beds. Since, you know, she is just a giant ball of energy, basically, so very tempting to our baby Venin over here. She's having none of this, though, and just goes, no, he would never hurt me. Okay, Bella. Is Violet turning into Bella Swan? Oh, no. They continue talking whether they should inform Zaden about their other plans, but he doesn't want to know anything more than he already does about trying to go find Andarna's family. He knows nothing about their treasonous plans. So basically our roles have switched, and Violet is leading a secret rebellion that he knows nothing about. Except this time he asked to be told nothing about it, so he can't be that mad. She eventually catches up with her whole squad in the infirmary, sitting with Sawyer as he's still recovering from losing a leg 2 weeks ago. They're all chilling, they're all hanging out, and then they hear a scream, followed by someone shouting, "They're all dead!" They go out to look at the fallen cadet who now has a gray handprint on them. The Venin are in the walls, they're in the walls! They all get into a little group huddle like pregame football time, and they go, none of us will die today, okay guys? 1, 2, 3, don't die! They all then split up to go hunt down Venin. Eventually, Violet goes, they're here for Jack. So her and Riddoc go running down to fight off the Venin trying to get him. Once they get down there, yep, there's 4 Venin down there with a cadet held to a table by knives, so that's a lovely sight. Also, one of these Venin has silver hair like Violet's. It's not gray or white, it's silver like her hair. But I'm sure that's not a big deal, so let's just get to fighting them, shall we? This silver-haired Venin smirks and then moves so fast she basically just disappears. Riddoc takes out one of the Venin that was right by the door. As they are fighting off the Venin, the writer on the table dies, so just another day at Basgaia 4 College. They should put that in the brochure. They're having a pretty hard time because the Venin are all of a sudden moving like the Flash. I don't know when this started happening. I don't remember this in the last book, but they're zooming back and forth. They can't see them to land a hit on them, so what are they to do? All the Venin are taunting Violet like normal when all of a sudden, shadows creep into the room. And we all know what that means. He quickly takes care of all of them that were still in the room, but that silver-haired one did already leave. Also, once again, Garrick shows up right after Zaden killed everyone that needed to be killed. So I guess he's just too slow all the time or something, and please remember that. It's important later. Afterwards, they're all talking through everything with leadership. Pancheck there isn't too shocked that they were there to get Jack instead of go after the Wardstone and try to destroy that again. But they're not really fazed by that because maybe there's been plans like this before and they just don't know that the Venin have gotten this close. Because the students are getting told nothing right now. There is no battle brief to brief them. They all start splitting up, and Garrick is the last one to leave Zaden and Violet alone. Zaden has to eventually look at him and go, dude, I'm not going to kill her, leave us alone for like 5 minutes, please. He still doesn't leave though until she says, I'm fine. And as he's walking away, he just says, I'll be close by. He's reminiscing on his life before he was Venin and had actual alone time. And she's going on about how it's okay, I still trust you, we'll find a cure for this. And he can't help but think, don't trust me, that's a really bad idea. So yeah, somehow one of my favorite books is getting eerily similar to one of my least favorite books. Cause our man is acting straight up like Edward Cullen. They're going off the same script. Oh, also we find out that Sigale is not speaking to him because she's a bit pissed off that her writer became a Venin. Just a little mad. She's trying to argue with him that he is still himself, and he's arguing back saying, I am not whole anymore. And she's just going, no, it didn't change you. He is, of course, going, it really did, Violet. Then she just asks, do you still love me? He's really confused right after she says this, but then after a second he says, I could reach the rank of Maven, lead armies of dark wielders against everyone we care for, and watch every vein in my body turn red, as I channel all the power in the continent, and I would still love you. What I did doesn't change that. I'm not sure anything can. All Violet hears from this is that he's still in love with her and always will be, so he's fine. Oh, Violet. He then explains to her that with his mental shields up, he wasn't able to sense her until he was halfway down the hallway, very close to her. She's just going, that doesn't make sense. Why were you down there then, silly? Okay, I'm maybe making her sound way more annoying than she actually is right now. It's more, Then why were you down there? He explains he sensed them being the Venin. So maybe something is indeed broken, Violet. Okay, now after a little bit of delay because a lot of people were killed by Venin, she finally gets to go talk with the king and his people, the and she comes prepared with a whole list of demands from Andara because they're going to find Andara's breed. To keep this short, this meeting does not go well. It does not go as planned in her head at all. They miss out on a few very important things from Andara's list. Like, you know, Violet getting to choose everybody that goes on this mission with her. Small things. Violet is now on this task force run by Professor Grady, who in my head looks like Carr. All the professors look like this, so Carr is every professor. This is a little different from who she hoped would be leading this task force, you know, her sister Meera, but if we just put Grady in a convincing wig, I'm sure we can have the same vibes, right guys? As she's leaving, not feeling great about what she just got accomplished, she runs into Leoan. Couldn't tell you who he is. He just pops up in this book. Apparently he was managing Tyrrendor since they killed all the other rebels. Leoan gives her a missive from Takaris. All this missive says from him is, you have 3 days to hold up your end of the bargain. Short and to the point. She knows she's got to get a move on these plans of treason. So, of course, she just goes to everybody who is already in on this plan of treason, informs them that the original A plan did not go well, so yeah, they will have to commit treason now. I mean, honestly, what else are you supposed to do in this situation? The next morning, she's sneaking out of their room when a band of shadow wraps around her, and then Zaden is behind her, kissing her neck, kissing her somehow. They then turn into a couple of seagulls from Finding Nemo. This is a common thing with them in this book, where they just say, mine, mine, mine. It's a little weird, not my favorite thing that they've ever done, but pop off? Then he remembers he's Venin and forces himself to pull away. She's like, dude, nothing happened, we're fine, we can keep macking. I stuttered so much because I did not want to say that, but it just came out of my mouth against my will. He just points to the headboard where there's 2 little marks where he started channeling from. Zaden has to skedaddle out of there anyways because he has to sit in on a meeting between poor Emil and Navarre because Brennan isn't there to represent Arisha. The biggest problem of the day is that if anybody murders any of the other students, flyers, writers included, then this deal is most likely off. And you know, since we're at a place that I lovingly call, the Murder War College, the odds are not great of that happening. Zaden then hears something and goes storming towards the door to find Garrick, Bodhi, Imogen, Brennan, and Llewellyn all just standing there. This sends them all into an argument, but really they just needed Zaden to come to the meeting. And then eventually, Meera, who has just been standing at the end of the hallway, pops in too. Basically saying, y'all need to figure your shit out. Eventually, Zaden, Garrick, Brennan, and Llewellyn all leave together, and Imogen and Bodhi follow after them, leaving our sisters alone to talk. This is when Meera shows her the rune she was able to temper on this thing, and was able to alter the material it was tempered on, which is something they weren't able to do before of what we're aware. Now, mind you, we don't really completely understand runes, and I blame this on the fact that Violet doesn't really understand runes, and this is from her point of view, even though it's a history book, weird history book, but okay. She doesn't understand runes, so we don't really. We just know that Meera was able to do something cool and alter the thing it was placed on. Apparently, that's new. And this is all a key step for Violet's secret treason plan that Meera is not fully aware of, but she needed the rune and gave her a different reasoning for needing the rune. Our girlies walk down, they meet up with Brennan and a couple others as well, and Violet catches them all up on finding the whole, secret 7th breed thing. Meera doesn't love this idea, but she does know that they may be the key to defeating the Venin, so she can't really say no to going on an epic quest to find them. Taryn jumps in at this time to say, if dragons chose to leave, we probably don't want to find them, but if you want to go looking for them, sure. He is so cranky in this book. Andara is not happy to hear this from him and slams her mental shields up, basically like a teenager slamming her door. A little later, Riddoc, Rhi, and Vi are all sitting in the dining area, just waiting for news on this meeting that is still going on, when all of a sudden, commotion just spreads throughout. People are whispering to each other, they're running out, blah, blah, blah. They don't really know what's happening, but It can't be that bad, right? Then their group of first years come over saying you have to do something. First Wing grabbed one of Tail Section's flyers and is demanding a challenge. As our little group is rushing out, Violet shouts to Dane, "We need you. Come on." Sorry, I forgot I recapped Serena as Marin because Serena is like not in this book at all, and there are no pictures of any of her flyers. So this is what we're working with. Our group makes it out into the middle of this large crowd where Aura is standing there with her knife to a flyer's throat. Kat is about to jump in and claw this girl's eyes out, but Marin is holding her back to keep the peace. Dane steps up saying this is against codex. Challenges can only be issued in front of a combat master. And then Aura spits back at him, another codex lover. Article 2, Section 1. Riders outside Quadrant Chain of Command can't interfere with cadet matters. You're no longer in the chain of command. As all of this is happening, griffins and dragons are also starting to perch along the walls, so surely nothing will go wrong if a fight starts. Dane and Aura are still arguing. A bunch of other stuff is happening as well in this chaos, and then eventually Dane punches Aura in the face as he rips the flyer away from her, saying, "This ends now." My, Mr. Atos. Mr. Atos. This is just the start of his redemption arc. Violet is also now closer to the center with Riddoc and Auric flanking her. Aura is now stalking closer to Dane, pointing at her fire wielder patch, when Dane's just standing there saying, "I'm not going to raise a sword at you, Aura." Leaving Auric to just say, that's a choice. Dane is doing his best to talk crazy Aura down right now, but it is not working. Meanwhile, Violet's been over here trying to get through to Zaden, but his shields are up, so she can't get to him at all. As Violet is thinking through what to do about the situation, Andara says to her, "Dane is not the strongest." She's going, "No, he can definitely take her in hand-to-hand." But you know, Aura does have a fire signet, so what do you think Dane is gonna do about that? He's just a mind reader. Really cool, but not helpful in battle against a firebender. Wielder. I'm sorry. Finally, as Dane and Aura are about to start fighting, Andara again says, "Dane is not the strongest." And Violet finally gets it. She is. Violet then throws a dagger as Aura is taking off her gloves to start wielding, pinning her glove to the dais. And then she says, "If we're going to wield, then it's me you'll be fighting," as she is letting lightning branch out into the clouds. And then she goes on saying, "You see, Dane's too honorable to wield in a challenge, but you'll find that my sense of morality has learned to waver. You lift your hand against him again, and the next one goes through it. He's the reason you're alive, the reason you're all alive." Violet is going on with this speech for a while, and to basically sum it up, it's all going, "Eventually you're going to have to trust us. We saved your ass." And then Devara shows up. "Mom's here. We're all safe now." He's not impressed and just says, "Is this what you do when we give you a break from class?" "Well, we're back now, so break's over, kiddos." She sees her group of people that she needs to talk to, so she goes over to talk with them as well as a few others, but they only ask her and Auric to stay. They're saying it doesn't sound like negotiations went well, and Auric just says, "Let me guess, Halden complicated it?" Violet blanches and just goes, "Halden's here?" Violet, why would you be freaked out that the prince is here, Violet? What's going on with that? I'm sure it's no big deal. Auric confirms this, shooting Violet a knowing look, which is just met with a glare, and Meera is looking at Zaden, but she doesn't say anything either. And then to make it all worse, Brennan confirms that Halden is gonna be on the task force to go find the 7th breed. Our group politely asks Auric to maybe not do a bunch of dangerous stuff in case his brother does die. Auric simply says he would rather dismantle the family business than rejoin it, so he's probably gonna keep doing a bunch of dangerous, stupid stuff at the Dragon Murder War College. So now, back to the rest of Andara's commands, the most important one being that the Flyers get to stay at the War College with them at Bezgaev. And that's still up in the air and will take quite a while to actually get an answer on. Unless we commit treason! Wow! So of course that's what we're doing. Also, somebody makes a comment about Zaden winning this negotiation and how his father would be proud of him. She's like, "What, do you want to explain that to me?" And then has to ask repeatedly what the king gave him. Before he tells her, he makes her promise that she will sound the alarm if he goes too far as a Venin. She's like, "Yeah, okay, but tell me now, please." So, it turns out that the king gave Zaden his title back, and a seat at the fancy decision-making table. Yeah, Zaden is officially a duke again. Later on their way to commit treason, Riddoc is going on and on about how he wants to be on the quest squad. His name for the squad. She's like, trust me, if I was making the decisions, you would be. Finally, they see Garrick, Quinn, and Marin, who has no clue why she is here. They just explain they're not going to tell her because plausible deniability is what they're going for right now. And luckily, Violet was able to talk with this guy that they worked together on Land Nav last year to knock out a few of the guards on duty, so they have a pretty easy in and out. And he's going to keep watch for them as well. Then they run down to get Sawyer because they're going to need him to alter the iron in this thing that they're going to be putting a new rune in. He doesn't want to go because he's not even a writer anymore, so why don't they find another iron wielder? Because obviously he's not good enough. Eventually our group gets through to him that he absolutely can still do this, and they help him on their way to Treason. Quinn is staying hidden so she can make projections of all of them throughout the area to make it seem like they're not committing treason. This video is going to get flagged by the FBI for the amount of times I've said treason. And now they start on their way to the Wardstone. Iron. They're putting a new rune in the Wardstone, and if this fails, they all know that this could mean that the wards fall and then they all die from Venin. But sure, let's go for it. As they're walking that way, Imogen meets up with them and says, so I was gonna knock out all the guards, but I figured you wouldn't want me to knock out this one being Meera. Meera goes into big sister mode for a bit, sounds like she has common sense, and then she goes, yeah, sure, treason, yay! They've made it to the Wardstone now. She is having some flashbacks to the last time she was down here and, you know, her mother dying in front of her, but that's really not a big deal. Luckily, her BFF is here to comfort her during this. And Zaden is apparently just passed out somewhere while all of this is happening. Okay. Luckily, somehow their crazy plan works. Don't know how, but it does. Now, they simply just have to convince everybody that this really wasn't treason because it all worked out, guys. We make it to the next day, and we make it to battle brief. So everything's looking good too far. They get word that the negotiations are still on, so hopefully the flyers are here to stay. This is when Devera and all of them restructure all the wings, leaving Dane still in charge of 4th Wing, and unfortunately Aura's still in charge of 1st Wing, so we still have to deal with her as a wing leader, but it's fine. And, well, the other 2 wing leaders don't matter. Couldn't tell you their name if I wanted to. This is when frickin' Atos over here comes charging into the room, charging Violet with high treason. I mean, why would he do that? Atos then brings her to the scenarium, which is the big fancy table I've been talking about with all the leaders, which Zaden is on, by the way, so really, what does he think is gonna happen? Worst case scenario, Zaden murders all of you for trying to kill Violet. Like, I don't know what you think you're gonna accomplish here. Anyways, the scenarium has the lightning wielder patch that very obviously looks like Violet cut it off to Zaden at least, because she left it there on purpose for them to find. Zaden confirms with her mentally that she did mess with the words, but he's Zaden, so he's like, sure, I trust you. And then she confirms with him that he already signed the accords, making him a duke and officially signing a bunch of other things along the way. They're all talking about why she would do this and what to do about this when she interrupts saying, I'll save everyone the fuss of organizing a trial and execution. She points to the patch saying, that's mine. I was the one who orchestrated altering the Wardstone. I'm the reason that the flyers can wield, and that you now have a clear path to negotiate an alliance. You're welcome. Which, you know, obviously leaves this group stunned until he explained Cadet Sorengale and whomever she acted with committed this crime last night. And as of this morning, every single one of you and your king signed their pardons. So yeah, on a technicality, she is off the hook. The scenarium is still all sitting there being like, we can't just let her go, when Queen Marin, the Queen of Poor Emil, goes, sounds like the girl pulled off quite a feat. The Queen then thanks her and allows her access to her library at any time, which is even better than the archives here because they didn't try to erase their people's history. He tries to tell her that she can't just keep putting herself at risk for him, and she goes, I can and I will, so get used to it. And then goes off to talk with her friends who have pushed their way past the guards. This is when Atos comes out screaming about consequences. Brennan steps in front of him saying, not from you. And then he goes, well, actually, I'm the general of Basgaif now. What? Yeah, they made this weasel-looking man the general of Basgaif War College. No, in my head, he's skinny man, greasy hair, looks like Severus Snape. Anyways, we have to deal with that now, and it makes me question the king of this ruling country, or the general, whoever put him in charge of a war college. Like, are they Venin? Because clearly you are self-sabotaging right now, but she just goes on about how she's not scared of him, and how he can't lose her or her dragon. He's like, yeah, I can't really punish you, can I? But I can punish your friends. So you, and all the second years on your squad, will be heading to Samara for active duty. Tomorrow. He means getting to Samara by tomorrow. Problem is, with Griffin riders and everything, Samara is like a 20-hour flight away. That means they have to leave, right now, basically. Flying nonstop with very short breaks for the Griffins. They all get to Samara, and the colonel there is not having it. He knows that this is just a power play by Atos, and says they just finished a big battle, and it's pretty chill here now. But he won't be putting young cadets at risk. Tells them to go get some rest and figure out a way to be helpful later, but he's not worried about it right now. Luckily for our group, Violet knows a safe place to go. Zaden's old room that was warded only for her and him to get in, which means there's just been this giant room with a private bath chamber that no one has been able to access because Zaden can't be bothered to come take down the wards. But anyways, she gets all her friends in there, which leads me to the second thing about this, because when Zaden put up these wards, he said the one at Violet's room at Basgaev was for him, her, and anyone else she wanted to get in there. But the wards at his room at Samara were only for him and her. He blatantly said he could bring no one else in there. So I don't know how she got the rest of them in this room, but they're there now. Nobody dies getting in, and they all just pass out once they get in, basically. As she's sleeping, Violet has this strange dream where she's running into a house, finds Kat, and tells her they have to go because she's the future queen of Tyrrendor. And she's also holding a painting of a family she knows nothing about, but she wakes up, she's weirded out, and she talks to Rhi about it. Once everyone is up, they head out into the hallway where they overhear some people talking about evacuating Newhall, which is where Marin's family lives. So, of course, she's like, hey, what's going on? And yep, you guessed it, Venin are attacking Newhall. Even though that's not their normal spot, but with how overrun this base is, they don't have the manpower or energy to send out people to go fight this right now. So obviously, our group of poorly trained second-year cadets go, well, we hope your family makes it out alive, but really we can't help, so we'll just stay back. No, of course they go running into battle without a second thought. To be fair to them, their actual main plan is just to help get the civilians out and not really fight the Venin unless they have to. But still, we all know a battle is gonna happen. They all split up, they're doing their things with their pairings or on their own, I don't know. Of course, this ends with Violet being a total badass, taking down Wyvern from the sky with her lightning because she actually knows how to use it decently well now. Violet then sees the same silver-haired Venin and goes, oh shit, this is a trap. And this is when Garrick shows up? And then, before we have time to think about that, a tornado rolls up in here, spinning Violet and Taryn like those carnival rides that should not be legal. The tornado then sends them flying out directly into a cliff. All Violet hears is a cracking sound, and then her bond with Taryn goes dark. It goes completely freaking dark. Rebecca, this isn't funny. What are you doing? And then Andarna's crying over here saying, I can't feel him. And I'm crying too because what? Mind you, this is on page 90 of the book. Violet is just telling Andarna to choose to live because Violet thinks Taryn's dead and she's gonna die soon and she doesn't want Andarna to die as well. And then Taryn breathes. Rebecca, why was this necessary? Rebecca, why? Anyways, Garrick, who should not be here, comes over to help Violet get off Taryn because her legs and rib are messed up. His dragon is also knocked out, so now they're just both here without power with a Venin somewhere in the area. They agree to not tell anyone else Garrick is here because how the hell is he here? And she finally asks the important question of, so, how'd you get here when you're supposed to be 8 hours away? He tries to just be like, Zaden freaked out, so he sent me this way, She's like, yeah, cool, but how did you get here? He does his best to just brush this off, but then lightning strikes about 20 feet away from them as she starts to get angry. But that wasn't Violet, that was actually the silver-haired Venin that's in the area. Vi turns, throwing daggers at her, And this Venin just speeds away, missing them easily. The Venin then starts on this whole evil villain monologue thing about having to kill Merrin's family, well, only her parents really, but still. And how she really just wanted to talk to Violet and have her become a Venin, no big deal. And then she threatens to kill Garrick, who she refers to as a walker, which I don't think she means like a zombie from The Walking Dead, so we'll figure that out. Finally, after all of this, she properly introduces herself as Theophany, or, as my favorite take on this name, Theophany. Anyway, she goes on and on about wanting Violet and her powerful signet and her 2 dragons, especially the irid, which she learned about when she was a scribe, but had to leave before Andara was hatched. Mind you, this is the first time we get a name for her breed, so her breed is the irid breed, so like iridescent. Violet is now telling Andara to run because this crazy lady wants to kidnap her. After a bit more villain talk on how Zaden and her will join them at some point, Taryn wakes up and Theophany skedaddles. Theophany, I know, but come on, Theophany is so much more fun to say. She starts tearing up seeing that Taryn's awake, and he just says, "Do not dehydrate yourself on my account." She then turns to Garrick and says, "She called you a walker? You have a second signet, don't you?" Nonchalantly, he just goes, "And so will you one day." And then, well, she gets cut off, but there hasn't been a distant wielder since there was also a shadow and lightning wielder. So all of our big players are starting to come into play. After this, she just tells him, "Thank you, but go. I won't tell anyone you were here." Our group all makes it back to Besgaev with Merrin's little brothers as well. Brennan is there to get Violet somewhere where he can start mending her because she is messed up from flying out of a tornado. And Zaden is there being pissy because she put herself in harm's way again for him. Well, not even for him. I don't know why he's pissy all the time, okay? He's just super, super broody in this book. Brennan steps back once the healing is done, but stays behind because Zaden is very upset. And Garrick is the one to just go, "Dude, it's not her fault." So they start going back and forth arguing now, and then Violet eventually cuts in saying, "I don't need to be protected from him, and I own my decisions." Then her whole squad and Atos storms in, going on about how she disobeyed direct orders because, you know, Taryn was told by the other dragon that the colonel there wanted them to turn back and they didn't. Reed does just point out that they were told to make themselves useful, and that's what they did. So, really? Did they disobey direct orders? No. Atos is still trying to scare them when Riddoc jumps in, basically just saying, "And we'll do it again." To expand on what he says a little more, let me just read directly from the book again. "We make decisions as a squad. We take whatever punishment you want to give us as a squad. What we won't do is stand by while civilians die, regardless of what citizenship they hold. And before you ask, every single dragon and griffin agreed." Look, Riddoc may be the funny one, but he can also, defend them as well as anybody else. Atos, then just wanting to be mad and yell at someone else, turns on Brennan, going, "You have no right to be here, Azure." Brennan just corrects him, saying, "Sorengale, and I don't answer to you." He took his real last name back. Atos is still in there going on about how Violet and Zaden won't get the same leniency they got last year, and he just goes, "Yeah, tell that to the dragons." Atos finally leaves, and shortly after, Zaden basically orders everybody else out of there, and him and Violet start kissing. They eventually stop because Mr. Edward Cullen 2.0 doesn't want to lose control. He goes into how he was terrified for her and was willing to do literally anything to make sure she was safe, even channel and use a bunch of power directly from the source and become a full-on Venin. A little later, he does make it clear that he's proud of her choice, but that something is definitely broken inside him. And on top of all this, he's been ordered to the front lines outside of the ward, so he has no clue how he's going to make it through that without channeling because the power is so much more prevalent there. She just responds to all this saying, "You were just touching me, so clearly you have some control." They then just go back and forth about how much they would like to do each other. After they're done talking about that, they then get into talking about Garrett's second signet and how some of the marked ones have second signets. Let me jump in here with a little theory I got from one of her tour interviews. I don't think it's because of the relics on them. I think it's because their dragons lied about being in their familia line. Because on tour, Rebecca said, "Have you ever thought that maybe the dragons are lying?" Because there's a lot of dragons. I mean, you have the big ones like Terran, Segale that everybody just knows by looking at them, but there would be a lot of lesser known dragons that could just say they were somebody else, and then nobody would try to stop them bonding because they don't think they are in the direct family line. Oh, also small thing, because of Theophany's whole display out there, she also thinks that Venin have signets, which should be a lot more magic than they originally thought they had. Which also leads me into questioning on how no one before her thought that Venins might have signets, because poor Emil has known about them and has been fighting them for a while, but okay, romantasy book, you do what you want to do. Cut to sometime next week, Violet gets a letter from Zaden that basically says he channeled and now has to hide out in his room until the red goes from his eyes. On to more good news, Professor Grady showed Violet the first draft for the quest squad, and she knows basically nobody on there besides freaking Aura. Even better news, her and Imogen are on their way to go see Jack Barlow? They get down there and Jack looks like he is about to die. He is just shriveled up, tight skin around his cheekbones, not looking good. I imagine he looks like Tom Brady after questionable plastic surgery right before the Super Bowl. He looks like this because they have him in a cell where he has literally nothing to channel, which is basically how they keep themselves alive. They're in the cell with him, but he's chained up so he can't get to them. She makes a deal with him that she will give him a bit of imbued alloy to keep him going for another week or so, if he will tell her some stuff about Venin. So welcome to our very first Venin trivia night! Or practice for Venin trivia. I'm sorry. So, what does she learn? Well, Venin can sense each other, but the more experienced Venin can hide themselves from each other. Venin also don't have to be taught how to channel if they already know the feeling of magic. Like our dragon riders, it's very easy for them to reach into the ground and just take the magic because they can already sense it. Jack has no clue what is going on with the higher up Venin. That would be like letting a cadet in on all of General Melgorn's plan. Doesn't happen. And also, there is no way to stop the transformation once you channel for your first time. And before these two leave, Imogen wipes his memory so he can't tell anybody they were there. As soon as they get out of this area and back into the courtyard, Sawyer and Riddoc are just waiting for her like lost puppies. And Sawyer is looking fresh because they are going to the archives, so he's gonna see Jesinia, who he likes a lot. They're walking over, having some banter about how her and Zaden argue like an old married couple. Riddoc has some quippy responses to this, but they eventually make it to the archives. Riddoc is talking about his plans on how he wants to get into the quest squad and goes, Jesinia, maybe you want to put in something in the information that they're really going to need an ice wielder for this mission.
I'm never winking again. Ever.
Yeah, sadly we do learn that Jesinia was kicked out of the Adept program for scribes, but that means she is really just focused on getting them information needed for the mission to find the 7th breed, irids. Jesinia gives them some books about the Severnmost Isle from Queen Mara's library, which is the last isle that this continent had communication with. Of what she's already researched, she thinks that an isle kingdom assisted the Crovelin uprising. And the only person that would have this answer for sure is Violet's dead father, Asher. Slight problem. Besides the fact that her father is dead, all of his old work is in Violet's old living quarters, which are now General Atos's living quarters. And the only way to get in there is to be related to them by blood, or be invited in by somebody who is blood. Violet doesn't think that Dane is to the rebellion point of stealing those books from his father, but her group does point out that he already betrayed his whole nation, so really what's the difference? 3 days later, at Battle Brief, they are given new Venin textbooks and are told they will be adding 3 more classes to their schedule. And it's also revealed to everybody that they are pretty sure that high-level Venin also have signets. So, everybody will be allowed to wield in challenges now, but death is no longer an acceptable outcome. Oh my word, the Dragon Murder War College is becoming less of a murder war college. I'm so proud of Bezgaev. I imagine they now have one of those little whiteboards that say, days since last death, and it's constantly going back to 0. I feel like people are still dying all the time here. Oh, and also, one of those 3 classes that is being added to their schedule is specifically for them to learn how to fight each other with signets, and will have a rotating professor. And then at this time, Zaden walks in. That's right, he is now Professor Ryerson. Violet is too stunned to speak. Down their mental bond, he asks, what's wrong? She just responds, I think our relationship just ended. He goes, absolutely not. After Battle Brief, Ree is walking with Violet being like, you must be so happy that Ryerson is back. This is where she just goes, yeah, sure. Do you know where Dane is? Rhea's real confused because Zaden just got back and now Violet is asking for Dane. Did she hit her head? What is going on? She replies to Rhea's confusion by saying, Article 8, Section 1, Code of Conduct. Yeah, there's obviously a rule about students not dating their professors. She finds Dane, explaining to him that she needs him to sneak into his father's living quarters and steal back her dead dad's diaries, or books of work. He's replying saying, I don't even know if my dad wants me there, when the doors open, revealing Zaden and Kaori. He asks for a word in private with Violet, and she just says, I don't think that's a good idea, actually. He's again confused, and then Dane says, oh shit. Article 8, Section 1 of the Code of Conduct. Bodhi is just standing there going, y'all broke up? Yes, no. Dane jumps in at this time going, I mean, if you're the new professor, the code applies. I can't think of any part of the codex that overrides it. Zaden, basically then just tells Dane to shut up. Dane at this time just starts backing up with his hands up saying, don't blame me. I didn't write the code, nor did I accept the job. This is when Bodhi hurries out after him saying, I gotta get to class. Bodhi doesn't know what's about to happen, but he knows it's not gonna be good. Now it's just the two of them alone. Violet's going, we gotta live by the codex, and Zaden goes, I don't live by the codex, I live by you. Well, damn. But I do have to say, if he wasn't hot, this would just be creepy, but luckily he's hot. He explains to her that Kaori thinks they can get an exemption from this since they were already dating before he started teaching here. This is when Atos walks in and basically immediately says, I will not give you an exemption from this. If you break the rules, I will make sure you are kicked off the grounds immediately. Blah, 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 blah. Zaden then just calls him an asshole and then says, don't worry, insulting you isn't against the code of conduct. I already checked. Violet walks out of the room now and finds Dane waiting for her in the hallway, saying, I'll walk you to class. And this is when he agrees to break into his father's living area and get her father's works. Let me make it clear right now, Dane is not trying to win Violet back. He knows that nothing is ever going to happen between them. He is just being a good friend here. Next Monday, she is with Professor Grady and the group he put together for this mission quest squad, as Riddoc likes to refer to it. Zaden is on his way. She's telling him to hurry up, and once he gets there, Lieutenant, I forgot his name, according to Violet, says this is a closed meeting. He just goes, that's okay. I'll forgive you for not inviting me. They pull the whole Maid Dragon card, so he stays. So, on the squad, we have Captain Henson, Air Wielder, Lieutenant Pugh, Farsight, Lieutenant Foley, that's his name, Argarian? I don't know. Cadet Binehaven, Aura, Fire Wielder, Lieutenant Winsher, Infantry Liaison, and Lieutenant Ryerson, Shadow Wielder. He points out that these are all very common signets, and why are there no shield signets here? Causing him and Grady to get in a whole argument. Okay, while they're fighting, let's get some of the details of this mission. They're going to fly out searching places for the 7th breed, irids, obviously. And after they check a new place, each time they have to fly all the way back to check in with command. Small problem, they only have 6 months, so they're going to be wasting half of the time they spend on this trip just flying back to meet with the scenario. They're also choosing to look around the northward coastline, which sends everybody into more arguing about where they should look. And during this time, Violet and Zaden are talking about one of the isles that helped with the second uprising, that her dad went very secretive on 6 months before he died, so clearly he didn't want anybody to have access to this information. And she explains to Zaden that Dane is sneaking into his father's house to get this information for them, hopefully. Grady finally gets the room back under control and is sticking with his plan to go north, even though with every fiber of her being, Violet knows they need to go south. These two try to stay back because they have had no alone time because somebody is always watching them. But Aura doesn't leave until they do. Okay, now cut to Friday, where we've got combat training with signets led by Professor Ryerson. They go to this fun amphitheater type thing that magically is warm because of wards and stuff they've put up for it. Amazing. This guy named Lauren tries to be like, I don't know why you're teaching us. You only graduated like a year ago. Of course, he's like, all right, let's fight. And then, of course, Zaden kicks his ass. At this time, Riddoc leans into Violet saying, I am either completely in love with your boyfriend or terrified of him. Not sure at the moment. Kat just chimes in. It could be both, trust me. Zaden then goes on this speech about how they've always trained in private to not give anybody else an edge over them. And now they're gonna all start training together. And then he breaks into the song from High School Musical about all in this together. No, but actually he's just making the point that they're all going to start making each other stronger by working together. Auric asked him, and you're gonna teach us how to defeat you? I can teach you on how to try, but there's only one person who can beat me. He means Violet. We all know he means Violet. He means Violet. It's a big shocker, I know. People keep going up against him and losing. Kat is the only one who looks truly devastated on losing. I mean, she really wanted to win real bad, and honestly, I'm kind of rooting for her to win. It would have been fun. But this is when one of our new flyers, Trager, goes, you're gonna get over him at some point, right? I mean, there's plenty of people who actually want you. Take the frickin' hint, Kat. I think Trager may like you. Then, Violet is called up to the mat. He instantly fills the entire area with shadows, so she can't see anything, but her power is lightning, so it's basically light, so it's not gonna be that big of a deal. Zaden is talking her through everything she needs to know on how to defeat him. This man is making sure that she can kill him if needed. And you know, that really hurt my feelings. This scene, I thought it was gonna be a fun, like, old school, they fight each other, but no, he's teaching her how to kill him. That's not fun, Rebecca. That's sad. But anyways, after that depressing scene, our squad goes down to talk with Sawyer again, reminiscing about their day. And then they start talking about the last two first years that are missing their signet in their squad, which is Auric and Lynx. But they've still got time, so it'll be fine. We also learned that Marin's little brothers are living with Rhee's family, which is just super cute. Eventually, Violet goes off to talk with Dane, and he explains to her that there is no way for him to sneak somebody else into the house. Which again doesn't make sense because she was able to sneak in her whole squad last year to steal a map from her mother's room, but we need this to be able to trust Dane, so he's gonna have to go in alone. And he makes a big show about it, being like, you have to trust me to do this, Violet. And eventually, she decides to trust him and tells him exactly where the books would be. He says, you'll have it by Monday. And now, her fate lies in the hands of Dane Atos once again. A few days later, after formation, Salone pulls Violet aside, but still won't really look her in the eyes because she killed her mother and feels ashamed about that. Violet tells her it's okay, you did what you had to do. Salone is still convinced, though, that she took the power because she was so scared of what would happen if she didn't get the wards up. And Violet's like, that's a valid reason to get the wards up and kill my mom, unfortunately. The actual reason Salone pulled Violet aside is because she has archive duty just like Liam. Just like Liam did. Anyways, she got a couple books from Justinia that she wanted to give Violet. 2 are directly from Justinia, and 1 was passed on from leadership, Dane. She hurries back to her room and opens the bag to find her father's book, which is locked by a passcode. And if she fails to put in the correct passcode the first time, there is ink hooked up to it, so it will just flood and ruin the entire book. No pressure. The only clue for this passcode is first love is irreplaceable. Later, she's talking with her squad about it, and they're like, couldn't it just be Lilith? And she's like, no, my dad never made anything that simple ever. They're like, okay, maybe it's Meera's first love. And then they're like, wait, Violet, who is your first love? She's like, my dad hated the first guy I dated. No way is it him. And he didn't even know the second. Auric is just sitting there basically smirking, saying, I mean, it fits. Auric, what do you know? Riddoc is just there highly offended that Auric, a first year, knows something about Violet that they don't. Quite rude. They don't come up with a solid answer that day, and they're not going to risk just trying any old answer because then they'll ruin the book, so they have to split up and agree to come back to it another day. Later, at another round of sparring with signet practice, a bunch of other squads have gone through person by person, and Rhys says, they never said we couldn't just go as a full squad. Garrick, who's there helping with sparring today, says, you ready to join in, second squad? Looking directly at Imogen. And then she lifts her hand, saying, you don't want anything to do with these. Leaving Garrick to respond, why don't you put them on me and we'll see? And then Riddoc, completely out of line, goes, oh God, just stop flirting and fuck already. And then in comic book character way says, I said that out loud, didn't I? Violet's like, yeah, you did. Garrick's gonna kill you. Anyways, I like highlighting some funny Riddoc lines because they're hard to get into the recap, but he was just the star of this book, and that's not even one of his best ones. Honestly, reading that out loud makes me realize that it's kind of cringy, but it's okay. Now, they all go up and stand on the mat together. He's standing there going, how is this fair? Rhee points out we don't fight as individuals, we fight as a whole squad. And then Zaden, who I'm just convinced just wants to see how this will play out, says, "It checks out to me, go for it." They're all fighting, and Garrick at one point almost takes off Violet's head, using his signet to just reverse other signets or use them. I don't understand his signet. His signet is just stealing other people's signets. It's very confusing. Anyways, Zaden almost kills him in that moment, but doesn't, because Violet tells him to stop. Violet eventually strikes the blade on the back of Garrick with lightning. It's like, oh my gosh, you really just did that, but you missed. Violet goes, "No, I didn't. If I hit you, you would be dead." And then someone from the top of the steps starts slowly clapping. "Welcome in, Prince Halden." He passes Violet just saying impressive. And then when her squad goes to sit down, he goes to sit down with them and right next to her. She asks him, "What are you doing here?" He proceeds to just lean back and compliment her black outfit. Zaden is now glaring at Halden. She asks him again, saying, "Tell me, what are you doing here?" He drags it out more, complaining about his life, his missing brother that must be just gallivanting around the country, and they have search parties out for him. Arik, who's right here. And I mean, of course, the biggest problem is her not noticing his new haircut. He talks about how heartbroken he is over that. She just responds saying, "You'd have to own a heart to break it. And the only hair I remember is your professor's over your face. It was auburn, right?" Yeah, this little twat, this little punk, this little, I don't have the right word. But he is the reason for all the trust issues in Iron Flame because he cheated on Violet Sorengale. I'm sorry, who cheats on Violet Sorengale? Get out of my house. This means that Violet was dating the prince who was one day going to be king. After all of this, he explains that he's here to help with the mission. I mean, we knew he was on the squad, but we were hoping he wouldn't show up. And then he gives her a missive bearing the broken wax seal of Viscount Dacaris. In this letter, the main thing is that the king of Deverelli has agreed to a one-time meeting with noble blood, and all he wants for this is the Emelian citrine, which is a gem that's stored somewhere in Anka? And Queen Mara has agreed they can retrieve it and give it to him. He goes on acting like the good guy, saying he's willing to order Grady to change course. And then he asks about her and Zaden, blah, blah, blah. And tries to be like, "I'm available even though I cheated on you." And then they go on about if she's actually in love with Zaden, blah, 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 more stuff like that. And he then reveals a very key part of information. Anyone who has ever dated a writer knows that their first priority, their first love, is their dragon. Once you accept that, another man hardly feels like a challenge. This is when it clicks in Violet's head that her mother's dragon's name had 6 letters. It would fit the first love narrative. Then Halden pushes his luck and tries to touch a strand of Violet's hair, and then a shadow blasts straight at him, knocking him back against the wall. Oh no! Oh, I hope he's not hurt. Oh, poor Halden. Unfortunately, he's fine. Zaden just covers this up, saying, "I was blocking a potentially lethal blow. Sorry about that." He confirms with Violet that it was because that Halden was touching her hair. Later, in her room, she puts in Amser, her mother's dragon's name, but she can't submit it yet. Where he's like, "Cool, yeah, if you need to wait a minute, let's chat about Halden, and then we can chat about that some more." This gets Violet to push the lever a little faster than she originally would have. And then the book opens with no spilled ink. The title of this book is A History of the Second Crovlin Uprising. Exactly what she needed. In the front of this book is a note telling Violet to find Nurella Anslim, a merchant on Deverelli, and to bring an exceptional gift with her, and she can't send anybody else. And then at the end of the letter, he says, "Trust only Meera." Got it. Violet reaches out to Taryn asking about a part of the letter that said, "safe beyond the reach of magic," and he explains that the Isles have no magic on them. That's why dragons remain here. Eventually, there's a knock on the door, and it is Zaden. She is so excited to see him, but then eventually remembers that he is not supposed to be here right now. And all he asks is, "Do you love him? Did you love him?" She's standing there shocked, like, "Oh my gosh, are you actually jealous? I was with him years ago." He goes on this whole speech about being jealous of everything that gets to touch her, even though he can't right now. She points out to him that he is Zaden Ryerson. And yes, she may have loved Halden in a way at one point, but it is not the same thing they have. They start making out again, and he's like, I can't lose control, Edward Cullen. I hate the whole, "I can't lose control of myself with you." Him and Edward Cullen need to go to therapy together. Gosh. So she starts talking about some stuff to distract him and talks about her dad's letter, all of that stuff, and he's like, cool, we'll go. She talks him through the artifact that they're going to need to get, the other thing they're going to have to trade, and how they'll be beyond the ward, so it's going to be dangerous. And again, he's like, yeah, we're all going together. We'll see how the squad works out. Then literally 4 hours later, their whole group is flying out to go get this artifact, including Meera. Once again, Andara has been left behind, and she is not happy about this. But you know, there are Venin hunting her, so this seems like the best thing to do. Taryn informs Violet at this time they have 12 hours before she'll start feeling pain from the separation from Andara. Which wasn't a problem the whole time they were flying back and forth during the last books. I feel like there's been longer periods where they've been separated and there hasn't been a problem, but okay. They fly all the way there and they eventually find the museum building that this gem is in that they need to get. So Meera and a few others go inside, a few others stay outside to guard, and Violet is with Aura guarding. After a bit, she looks at Aura, seeing that she is already taking her gloves off, ready to wield at a moment's notice. She's like, hey, put your gloves back on before you do something stupid. And she goes, I'm ordering you to be ready to wield, so get ready to wield. They have a little more bickering back and forth. Of course, she doesn't get through to her, but eventually Meera calls through the window, being like, hey, I found it. Then the door across the way swings open, squeaking. Zaden tries to warn Vi, saying, watch out, Aura, and then Aura starts shooting fire at the door. She is instantly on her, tackling her to the ground, so she can't do more damage than she's already done. She's already caught Professor Grady and a building on fire, which is now like a beacon signaling that they're there, they're right here, guys. By the time Zaden can smother out the flames with his shadow, Grady is already dead, so Aura's a murderer. I'm pretty sure she already was, but you know. Now she's killed a professor. And Zaden definitely couldn't stop all the flames that have just ignited across these dry wooden buildings, so now they're having to run through town to get to a spot big enough where their dragons can pick them all up before they burn to death. Once they get to this area, Meera is the first one to run out, Tiny grabs her, and they fly up no problem. Aura is running out next to get her dragon. Violet sees something in the sky a little too late, and then Aura gets stabbed through by a wyvern. I don't really have to move her, but like, I will. She could go down here. Oh no, Aura's dead? Oh, bummer. That sucks, guys. But don't worry, Sigale is here and starts attacking the wyvern. Violet and Zaden now run out together, and Taryn swoops down to pick them both up while Zaden is holding Violet and Taryn is holding on to Zaden. Gale finishes up with the wyvern, and they fly a little bit away, eventually land so they can all get resituated on the right dragon. After all of that excitement in 2 hours, they are safely back at Samara, at least, so inside the wards. They all stop there to rest for a bit and go over everything that just happened. Everybody is pointing fingers at everybody else. It's a big mess. Meera eventually gets to talk to Violet alone and says, I'm glad I got there first. This was just sitting there waiting. Violet, just a reminder that while I want you to come, of your own free will, I'm capable of taking you whenever I wish. Why do you not ask me for the answer you so desperately seek? T. Oh, goody! Violet has a cute little stalker! Yay! They get back to Basgaif, and a few days later, Riddoc comes up to her, again asking if he can join Quest Squad. Rhys says it's not gonna happen, stop asking her. Besides, she has Meera and Zaden there to protect her, she'll be fine. Violet is outside the meeting room now, and Riddoc is still there, and he says, will you just try? And she goes, what is this really about? He explains that ever since Athbeen, one of them has been by her side. But when they get separated, something bad happens to her. She's like, I don't need someone keeping watch over me. He goes, no, I didn't mean it that way. I just think when we aren't together, bad things happen. Bree can't go, and Sawyer is still not able to get on his dragon, so that leaves me. I've been reading every book, and then the skin on his orange just splits apart. As he's saying, it really pisses me off when you guys act like my sense of humor somehow lessens my ability to show up for the squad. Violet is just looking at the orange now going, what did you do? He explains, you're not the only one who has spent hours honing their signet. She takes the orange from him to peel back the layers to find it completely frozen on the inside, and asks, how did you do this? He just explains, I've always been able to draw water out of the air, and I got bored waiting for Sawyer to wake up. That's when I realized I could freeze the water in the fruit. She's looking at him going, are you telling me you can freeze the water in a human body? He's like, I think so. I mean, I haven't tried, but yeah. Sawyer, who has apparently been here this whole time as well, I believe Rhea is here too, jumps in saying, can any other ice wielders do this? The answer is no. There hasn't been anybody who has been able to do this for a very long time. Violet jumps back and goes, yeah, you're coming with me. Though it doesn't really have anything to do with the ice, it has more to do with the first point you made. They walk in to find Atos and Marion, one of Halden's guards who is definitely hooking up with, flanking Halden. Halden just goes, there's new people there. And she's like, yeah, it's because I wanted them here. And he goes, okay. I mean, he's a jerk, but at least he's useful. The current plan is that this group is leaving the day after tomorrow to go meet with the king. She's reading the new orders they have set, and part of it says that they'll be allowed to search Arisha. Violet goes, yeah, sorry, no one is searching Arisha? They try to make the points for their decision, but she stands firm on her decision of them not searching Arisha, saying, no, this is why everything went wrong the first time. I need people's trust. Markham, the leader of the scribe quadrant, steps in trying to explain it to her, and she says, no, don't you dare complain to me about missing 6 years of information when you have hidden centuries of our continent's history from the public. He gets very upset, saying, you can't speak to me like that. And she goes, yeah, I can. You're not in charge of me. And then Atos steps in, saying, I speak with the authority of Melgorn, the, head general of the army. I don't care. I don't care, Atos. Violet, on the same line of thought, goes, okay, cool. I speak with the authority of Terran, Andara, and the Imperium, so checkmate, biatch. Halden tells everybody to stop. Looking at Violet, says, I'll give this one shot. You name your squad, but if you fail, we assign another commander. She's like, great, the squad will be Ryerson, Sorengale, Gamlin, Cordella, Atos, Halden, and whatever guard he wants. Big Atos tries to object, and Halden just gives him a look, basically saying, shut up. And then another lady from the Scenarium big fancy decision table is going on about how Zaden can't leave because he doesn't have an heir yet. Maybe she could agree to his absence if he accepted her daughter's proposal. Zaden explains to Violet this is one of many stupid proposals that mean absolutely nothing. Zaden goes on saying, the other two can lead the class while I'm gone, and I'm going, so decision made. Then Halden tries to go, if I give my permission. He replies to that going, I asked for permission from one person on this continent, and it sure as a Mari isn't you. Halden tries to act all tough and big and prince-like, and Zaden just brushes him off because this guy doesn't even have a signet, loser. All of it's agreed on. They're leaving the day after tomorrow. But not before Meera can go over to the new guy, Drake, and kick him, right in the groin because he was instrumental in bringing the wards down in an area last year. That almost got Violet hurt. She doesn't like him too much. I mean, it sounds like our squad has no problems with each other already. I mean, Meera and this Drake guy are getting along great. Meera really went, say Drake. They're getting along great. Halden and Zaden are gonna get along great. It's gonna be fine. I moved him up there so you could actually see him. He's not dead, I promise. Alright, our group is on their little road trip now, and the first stop on our road trip is to see Viscount Takar's. They're stopping at his place to get a little rest before they fly all the way to the First Isle. Because the griffins just don't have as much stamina as the dragons. They are much smaller than them and need some rest time, and also our humans appreciate it too. Takar's just like, that's fine, but with the amount of people I currently have here and y'all are all gonna have to double up. But Ryerson, your room is still completely open, so you don't have to, even though you aren't wearing the insignia of your rank. Zaden hates patches. Riddoc would probably, for the fun of it, just wear all of his patches if he could. He simply tells him shiny things make easy targets. I've never been the one to confuse title and rank. And then he gets into a whole fight with Halden, leading right into his trap for Halden to admit that Ryerson is not here as a professor. He's here as a duke. So then he goes over to Violet, and they go to his room together. A little bit later, somebody's knocking at their door. It's Takar's again. And, Takar's isn't too happy that their crown prince arrived in a basket, because no dragon was letting this man fly on them. No griffin was letting them ride on top, so the griffin carried him here in a little basket. He basically just says, you cannot arrive to the Isle Kingdom like that. That will not look good. So me and Halden are getting on a ship tonight, and we'll meet y'all there in a couple days. Get some rest. He warns them a little bit about this isle before he leaves. Basically, the main point is, don't make a deal you can't keep. These people speak in straight facts. The king there doesn't really know sarcasm, so don't say something you can't promise, you know? Our whole group is now rested, so now we're flying towards the island. As they're getting closer to the island, the magic is fading. Eventually, Andara has to buckle up onto the harness that Taryn still has on him for her. Or she buckles up her harness onto the saddle that Taryn has for her and Violet. Because no magic makes it harder for the dragons to fly. They can still do it, it just takes a little more energy. Other problem, the dragons can't communicate with each other, and neither can Zaden and Violet. But Violet is still able to communicate with Taryn and Andara, so she figures everybody else can too. They land in front of Takaris' manor on this island, and then she hears Riddoc stomping forward, and then she hears Artem, his dragon, roar. And this is when he turns around and says, "I don't know what you're saying." She's like, "That's odd. Why can I still speak to my dragons?" She confirms with Meera that Meera also doesn't have any contact with her dragons, and then she's like, "But I can talk to mine," and Meera's like, "I don't know. That's good for you." They get inside. Takaris informs everybody that he already got permission for the dragons to hunt in the forest there, but they are not allowed to eat any humans. The dragons all go off to hunt, and Halden already has an audience with the king this afternoon. This is when Riddoc comes up, and Takaris goes, "You need a bath," and Riddoc's like, "No, I need a horse. Because all our dragon riders and some of our flyers are going to the market to get her the things that her dad left on this island for some reason for her. How did he get here? I don't know. He wasn't a dragon rider. It doesn't sound like Lilith came with him. I guess he rode on a boat as well." Get permissions to take the horses in a little bit. After all this, she walks over to Zaden, who is just like serenely staring out at the beach. For once, he is at peace with the world. I never thought we would see Zaden looking like that, but he looks peaceful. She asks if he wants some company out here or just for her to sit with him, and he goes, "No, get some rest. I just want to sit by myself and soak in the view." A true introvert through and through. There's no power here, no taunting lore. There's no power here, no lore. There's no taunting reminder. I can save everyone if I just reach and take the power. And now, welcome to my favorite part of the book, because apparently Rebecca was just in a silly, goofy mood, and all of our characters are completely unhinged for the next 20 to 30 pages. It's a work of art, truly. Our group of dragon riders is now riding on horseback. Newsflash, they all hate it. The griffin riders aren't as bad because the griffins are similar size, but this is not what our dragon riders are used to. Kat's like, "You guys ride dragons. What is the problem with horses?" And Riddoc goes, "Dragons don't bite. Horses do. Sir, your dragon has definitely killed multiple people. I think they bite. We've seen so many people die at the hands of dragons." Zaden's on his horse as well. He's in a sleeveless shirt, and he is looking fine to Violet. And then he winks at her, and she almost falls off of her horse. Again, Rebecca was in a silly, goofy mood. This whole area is a little bit dramatic, and that's okay. Also, she is suffering a little bit because, she has POTS, EDS, and intense heat mixed with that does not work well at all. Riddoc uses her not looking too great to point out that Violet also doesn't like riding horses. Dane's like, "No, she's always been a good rider." Zaden then just casually asks him, "Did you two ride a lot as kids?" And everybody in the group leans in because Zaden being nice to Dane has never happened before. Him asking a genuine question about their friendship growing up, not heard of. He's confused on why everybody is looking at him, and he's like, "Can I not ask about your childhood?" He's like, "No, you just normally pretend we weren't friends growing up, ever." And Riddoc is just sitting back there on his horse going, "I am so glad I came." He is here for the drama. And me too, man, me too. And then they all talk about their horse riding experience and bond. The power of friendship. They eventually make it into the market area, and people are running into buildings screaming "Firebringer" at them. So they're getting a really nice, warm welcome. They're the only people wearing black here, so they kind of stand out just a little. It's like a bunch of My Chemical Romance fans walked into a group of Swifties. There's a big divide there. They eventually get to a bookstore. How fun. Violet must be so happy. They're in the bookstore for a bit, and then an assailant just comes running out at them. They're charging from the back shelves, and Meera easily takes them down because she's Meera. To say the least, our dragon riders take care of these two people very quickly. They just tie them up. They do not hurt them any more than they have to. And then they point to the back door and say, "You should leave." She's back with the group now, and to the other people in the bookstore, she goes, "Well, that was annoying. Are you protecting something, or do you really just hate us that much?" The shopkeeper's then just like, "I just hate Firebringers in this store looking for Nurella." Then someone starts walking down the stairs. Dane translates what the shopkeeper is saying as, "No, Mom, save yourself." Violet looks at the shopkeeper and just goes, "We are not here to kill anyone." Nurella makes it down and goes, "You must be Asher Sorengale's daughter, here to collect the books he wrote for you." Yep, that's right, more books. What else would this man have to give her? I mean, look at him, because that's obviously exactly what he looked like. She apologizes for her grandchildren, saying they just take the job of protecting those books very seriously. And then as she's looking at Zaden and Dane, goes, "My, the continent does have some fine-looking men." Again, Rebecca was off the rails. I love her. Then as she's talking to her grandson about something, she says, "I'm not dead," and then she goes, "What is it you Armorellas say? Oh, I haven't yet met Malik." She's confused because doesn't everybody worship the same gods? And then Nurella explains to us that on this island, they don't worship any gods. It keeps it neutral for trading. So this is an island full of atheist or Scientologist, I don't know. Some form of that. I'm gonna lovingly refer to Nurella as Grandma for the rest of this little bit, so just go with it. Anyways, looking at Zaden, Grandma says, "I heard you saying you killed my grandson if he took another step towards your beloved young man. How logically, toxically romantic of you. I have to admit, that kind of confident violence isn't what I pictured when Asher talked about you. But the brown hair, those, I guess they're brown eyes, and how utterly smitten he predicted you two would eventually be for each other, well, he described you perfectly, Dane Atos." To catch y'all up, this is not Dane Atos. This is Dane Atos. And everybody loses it. Meera is cackling, losing her breath from laughing so hard. Dane leans into Violet asking, "So how would you like this to go?" And Zaden just says, "The same way it's gone on for the last 18 months. Everyone assumes she'll wind up with you, but it's my name on the back of her flight jacket information." Violet's like, "My guy, this is not the time." Dane has to get real sassy now and go, "We don't have last names on the back of our flight jackets, actually." He snaps back just saying, "And you still get the point." Grandma's like, "Maybe I made the wrong assumption, but oh well." They explain who Zaden is to Grandma, and she goes, "Asher definitely didn't predict that." They think they're gonna have to inform her that Asher is dead, but he's not. She also knows that Lilith is dead as well. And now it's time for the test. Because Grandma was told not to give these books to Violet unless she obtained the intelligence and understanding to comprehend them. All she needs to do is answer 3 simple questions. Doesn't sound that hard. The first question is just the name of the manuscript her dad left her. She just says the second uprising of the Crovlan people. She then asks in chapter 14, your father alludes to the Crovlan uprising falling apart because of develli, but does not go into specifics, so tell me your hypothesis. She goes, "Easy, they didn't keep their part of whatever deal they made." She's like, no, I need more details than that. Why did it fall apart? What did they broker? And then after going quiet for a bit because she doesn't want to say this in front of everybody, she says, "Dragon eggs. I think they promised dragon eggs and couldn't deliver." Everyone in the room is rightfully shocked because trading dragon eggs is unheard of. That's not something that happens. Dragons don't let that happen. And to have the audacity to even say you could maybe get people some eggs is insanity. Grandma's then like, "Okay, present your proof. Convince him," pointing at Dane. Here's a little bit of her proof. Public Notice 433-323 acknowledges a failed border breach attempt by Crovlan forces near the outpost of Athbean on December 11, 433 AU, 2 days before the Midnight Massacre. The only other record of that event exists in the journal of Colonel Ashby, the commander of the outpost whom oversaw the interrogation. Dad drilled that into me while he was working on this manuscript, and I didn't understand why then, but obviously I get it now. I think it was the year you were obsessed with the tactics of defeating Emerald Sea piracy or something. She's like, "Yeah, piracy was a really big problem back then," and she's like, "Okay, just stay with me for a bit." "We were on the couch. Dad was pacing in front of the fire. You thought it was ludicrous that the soldiers had crossed into Navarre to acquire tail feathers, remember?" And then it finally starts to click that they were coming to get feather tails, not tail feathers necessarily, but feather tails, baby dragons. And after all her proof, Dane does believe her. And then Grandma's last question is, "What made you leave the prince?" She's like, "Excuse me, what?" "Yeah, your dad said he knew it wouldn't last long, but I just want to know why it ended." She asked for Taryn to come over to just set the whole shop on fire at this point, and he goes, "That wouldn't bode well for public relations." Andara says she would, but she knows Violet wouldn't get her books if she did that, so she doesn't. She eventually tells her, "I left him because I found him in a delicate situation with one of his superior officers." Grandma's straight up like, "He was having sex with a professor? Tell me more." and is asking, why didn't you take him back? Violet explains that no amount of power is worth staying with somebody who doesn't love you. Damn right, girl. After Grandma gets all the tea she wanted, they finally collect the books and they head out. Oh, and all these books have passcodes as well, so thanks, Asher. Making it real simple. They get back to Takars's manor. They're all relaxing. Violet is taking a nice warm bath, and then Zaden comes in. He's like, you feel rested? And then they start going at it. And look, I don't read spicy scenes, but Book Talk has informed me there's some really weird physics with a chair, and the videos of people trying to figure it out are so funny. Oh, yeah, I don't know how the physics work. Yeah. Spicy scene physics are something else, okay? Oh, and also they broke a table. Oh no, my table, it's broken. And then of course other people come knocking at the door saying there's a problem, because every time these two try to do anything together, it always ends with somebody being like, knock, 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 we're all gonna die. Except this time it's not really a problem, because it's just that Halden's been kidnapped by the king, for being a little bitch, so that doesn't really seem like our problem. I say we just leave him here. Nobody likes him. Nobody wants him to be the future king. This seems like how we get rid of the problem, you know? And Zaden agrees, because he just says too bad for Halden. And Riddoc is just more interested in getting the tea on the broken table in there. He would like to know how that happened. Anyways, due to political stuff, they need to go rescue Halden, which is just a bummer. So Zaden and Violet go to rescue him because royal blood, blah, blah, blah. On her way there, Violet is checking in with Andara and Taryn, being like, are you guys in any pain from not having access to magic? Taryn just goes, do I check in with you every time you're in pain? No, don't ask me. I'm fine, it's just a minor inconvenience. Because I am son of bunch of long dragon names, blah, 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 blah. She's like, all right, yes, I get it, you're superior in all ways. They eventually get to the gates, and the guards there are like, hey, you can't come in. He explains to them that their king has captured their asshole prince, and unfortunately they need him back. Taryn is standing right behind them as they're all talking, and then one of the guards pulls her blade, and Taryn roars. The guards are still adamant, though, that they cannot enter, and Zaden's like, I am the Duke of Tyrrendor. He's probably expecting me, okay? The guards then look at Violet, and he goes, she's my consort. Violet is just standing there like, what the f***? Because that means they're married. Anyways, continuing on, they're being escorted in now. His plan worked, at least. She leans into Zaden being like, consort? He just explains that they use it really loosely in aristocratic circles. He's pretty sure that one of the dukes has had like 6 consorts, so it's fine. It also gives you my protection and privilege as well. He's like, I don't need those, I'm strong. And he goes, ouch, I didn't think you would reject me. They eventually make it all the way into this like open air building. Again, this is a beach town. So they're all here in this open airway building, and King Cortland is just sitting there. He's a little older than them, but not much. He has a bejeweled dagger in his hand and is just staring daggers at Halden. Also, Takaris is here. He's trying to keep the peace, but it's not going well. She decides that right now is the best time to give Zaden a crash course on politics here. I mean, they only had the whole time they were planning to do this for her to say all this to him, but no, right now, before we sit down with the king, let's talk about the politics and beliefs they have, shall we? They make it to the table just fine after introductions. Violet turns to Halden and goes, what did you do? And he has the audacity to ask, what makes you think I did something? I don't know, Halden. I don't know, Halden. Why would I think that? He then continues on, saying, I did exactly what I was sent here to do. I reestablished diplomatic connections. Cortland explains that the problem is he did this by giving away stuff that was not his to give. And see, the king really isn't happy about that, so he then stabs the dagger into his hand. So, ooh, ouch. He screams. Sucks for him. But Cortland politely tells him to stop being a baby. And then reveals that the thing that Halden was trying to give away was one of Zaden's daggers. Or the Duke of Tyrrendor's dagger. Cortland is now going over all he could get from King Tari if the life of his son is on the line. Karis jumps in now saying, you can't just keep him. And Cortland doesn't understand why not, because Halden lied, so why can't he keep him? And then while they're all talking, there's this big dinner spread in front of them that's covered by a dome thing. What are those called? I don't know.
Cloche.
A little later, some white panthers come waltzing in named Shira, Sheena, and Shora. Real creative there, Mr. Cortland. Thank you for that. As the panthers are approaching, Violet tells Halden to get the dagger out of his hand and wrap it. She's going over to help him, and Cortland's like, no. If you want negotiations back on the table ever, you're not gonna help him. I need to make sure you can do things and keep your promise even if they're hard. Once his hand is all wrapped up, Zaden goes, we would like to reopen the negotiation now, to reopen our diplomatic channels, and to secure Viscount Dakaris's mansion as a stopping point for their search parties. Plus, their dragons will need to hunt. Cortland asks him, okay, who's your loyalty to? And he easily says, Violet. My loyalty is to Violet above everybody else. After a bit, Cortland's like, my panthers are hungry. So they take the giant dome thing that's covering the food off to reveal a head of Halden's guard that was with him, who he was definitely sleeping with, but clearly isn't anymore because she's dead. And the panthers start to eat all of this in front of them. She's on this platter because she was found in the treasury trying to steal 6 stolen treasures, according to Halden, back from Cortland. But see, simply, these things were fairly traded to Cortland and this kingdom, so they had no right to them. He's clearly very upset about this. Zaden is just trying to save this negotiation by offering the sword of Arisha, but he is cut off before he can offer that. And then Cortland orders for all of them to be killed besides Dakaris, so goody. That went super well. Zaden grabs his swords, tosses one to Halden, and Violet is getting her daggers out and ready to fight. Their goal is to not kill any of these guards because they would still like to be able to do these negotiations even after they attempted to murder them, but small thing, they can put that aside. Because they went to the Dragon Murder War College, so really this isn't all that different. Violet is fighting one of the guards, then gets thrown back, and now the guard is over her asking, do dragons scream before they die? She's just there going, wow, you really know nothing about dragons. And then using her hypermobility right now, she gets an arm around and stabs this guy hard in the arm. And everyone then grabs her by the throat, but she deals with them as well. And bellows, that is enough! And Andarna's like, no, she holds her own. Oh, perhaps now there are too many. We love Andarna for her confidence, even if it was instantly taken away. Zaden then sees that Violet got cut, and then he gets the most terrifying look on his face and says they're all dead. So, I guess the not killing anyone plan is out the window. Woo! And then somehow on this island with no magic, Zaden starts wielding, and then cracks all of their necks with his shadows. Good. She has no clue how he managed to channel right now, but she'll figure that out later. Cortland is now just standing there like, maybe I fucked up. Violet has to take over now to save face and also cover his eyes because there's probably some red in them from channeling, through whatever way he did. She goes over to Zaden and tells him to sit down and put his head in his hands, and then calls for help from her dragons. Then she turns to the king and goes, we're trained to kill when we're attacked. As you can see, he's very remorseful. But trying to kill 2 of our kingdom's nobles is not a good way to start negotiations. So, shall we try this again? Cortland is still just standing there dumbfounded, being like, we don't have magic. And she's like, yet, here we are. Halden, who was knocked out during the fight, wakes up asking what happened. As Cortland is now looking up terrified because Andarna is holding one of his panthers in her mouth. She simply explains to the king that if he stays put, the panther lives. And he can't even say anything else besides the panther's name. She now starts her form of a villain monologue, I guess, honestly. You see, that's my little one. I tell her we don't eat our allies, but adolescents. So we can either open negotiations again, or I can call the other 2 dragons and they can all have a little panther for a snack. Oh, and even if you had succeeded in killing us, our dragons wouldn't have died. So they would have just come here and burned the whole place to the ground. He agrees to negotiations now, shockingly. Before she goes over to Cortland, she walks over to Zaden being like, Sigale is here. Go. Wait out in Arisha until your eyes look normal again. Now turns back to the king going, okay, same deal as before, but we are also pardoned from any crime. And shockingly, the king agrees to all of this. She gives him the citrine and some dragon eggshells to kinda put the icing on the cake to get him to officially agree to this. At first, he's just going, we already have a dragon eggshell. Violet explains, no, you don't have one like this because this is Andarna's shell. So it's the shell of the only irid on the continent. He goes, there's no 7th reed, what are you talking about? And then stops talking because Andarna has disappeared into the foliage and his panther just looks like she's hanging in midair. The king adds one more thing into this deal, and that is that Halden is never allowed to step foot on this island again. Violet easily agrees to that. Before they can get out of there, the king tries to offer one more deal that Zaden and Violet could come be his personal guards. And we don't find out about that detail until Violet is telling Rhee about it once they're back as Basgaev, so obviously they didn't accept it. They get called out in class for talking and asked if there's something more important to talk about right now. And Riddoc's like, well, Violet is responsible for saving the continent right now, so Rhee slams her hand on his mouth, saying, absolutely not, you have our apologies, Major. She takes her first good look at the map and sees that the Venin are moving south now, showing a change in their strategy. It's as if they know that the Arishan wards are failing. Now, a little later, the squad's second and third years are all reading books as they're waiting to spar when the squad's first years come up saying, we want to help. Rhee goes, cool, you can watch sparring. They're like, no, we want to help with the mission. They're all arguing back and forth now. The first years are going, you're one short of even pairs. Eventually, Imogen jumps in saying, what Sorengale is too nice to say is that first years aren't coming. And Garrick adds in, or helping. Dane now comes down to break this all up, saying, sit or move. And then Salone is saying, we're just trying to help. And then her cheeks start flushing, and her gaze drops away from Dane. Salone? Hey, Salone? What the hell? Dane just tells her that she can help by staying alive. So then she turns on Dane, saying, really going to mourn the loss of another Mari? His death will always be on my head. Yours will not. I don't coddle first years anymore, so train your signet. She whispers asshole as her cheeks flush. And Violet's inner monologue says, I lift my brow at the look she shoots him, mostly because I can't tell if she wants to stab him in his seat or, and then they rudely get interrupted before she can finish that thought. Violet pushes more on why Salone isn't training her power, and she says, because I don't want to just kill people, that's all I can do. And Violet's like, really, I've never related to that. I just suck the magic out of things. And besides, would you guys really have sat along if your second years last year would have been trying to save the continent without you? I don't think so. Violet is left completely speechless by this, and Sawyer says, good point. She tries to make the Liam argument, and she's like, no, he made his choice. I want to make mine. So she eventually hands them all a stack of books, telling them to write a one-page report on each of them. The rest of the first years leave, but Auric stays back to ask how the mission went, and she just informs him that Halden was Halden. He pushes some more, being like, did he jeopardize the mission? She explains everything that happened to him, and he asks, are you in over your head? She simply says no. He narrows his eyes, but eventually leaves and follows the first years. Our group is all back to reading now when Zaden enters. Now, he hasn't been here for a week, so Violet is very excited to see him, but he's also a professor, so they really can't do anything about it. They just get to use their mental talk path for the first time in a while. He lets her know he's feeling good, he got some sleep, but he hates his bedroom there now because she's not there. She then notices his eyes and catches the amber, not gold flecks. He's becoming more Venin. They go back to talking about how there's no time to do the mission the way everybody else wants, and Violet finally just says, so we the rules. We supply and we leave as planned, but then disobey direct orders and don't fly back between aisles every time. Sawyer points out that if they do this, they'll be court-martialed, but then it's like, well, if we find the seventh breed, we'll be fine, so. Riddoc is just worried that they still have to take the prince, but unfortunately they do. Bodhi then puts up a sound shield and tells Violet to come here, and then asks, why are you in such a big rush all of a sudden? She then says, look at his eyes. They're not gold-flecked anymore. They're amber. Bodhi understands now and then hands her 2 vials, one with an S and one with an A, serum and antidote. This is the serum that blocked her off from her magic connection last year, and the antidote to restore that connection. And then, the second year on the mat starts draining the ground and Carr kills her instantly. No questions asked. She's just dead. And she can't help but imagine on what they would do to Zaden if they found out. 10 days later, Quest Squad is ready to go. Zaden and Halden get into a fight, and Andara has some helpful advice of just letting them fight it out because, he's not a great representative of them, and Zaden would definitely just kill him. And then Taryn chimes in saying, that won't be a problem. And then we see Auric flying in on his dragon. She's telling him, no, don't do this. It's dangerous. He explains, I'm not just gonna sit here while Halden goes off and destroys your mission. She's still trying to argue with him, but he's not listening, so she turns to Dane, being like, tell him he can't go. And Dane goes, I think he outranks me here. Zaden now comes over to confirm that Auric is now coming. Violet's calmed down enough to just accept that this is his decision and he wants to do it, so there's nothing she can do about it. So he turns around now and goes, looks like we found ourselves another prince. And Halden's jaw is on the floor. Because in his reality, Auric has been gambling or at brothels. Not at the Dragon Basgaev college thing. But nope, He just flew in on a badass blue dragon. Auric then lays into him saying, I'm here because I'm not just going to sit here while Venin take over. And I'm not going to let you go on this mission because you will ruin our only hope. I'll be going as the royal representative. He's like, absolutely not. Auric's like, no, I'm absolutely going because now that the Griffins have another option, they're not going to carry you. Now, before Halden leaves, he actually does have his first not complete asshole moment and looks at Violet and says, make sure my brother is safe. After a couple days of travel, they make it to the island of Dune. Not like the movie Dune, but the goddess. After they do a perimeter sweep of this meadow, they know they're alone for now, but they also know they won't be alone for long. Basically, their plan is to just wait for somebody to get them and take them to the queen there, so that Auric can talk to her. Violet is now talking with her sister Meera, asking where she went on leave, because she went on leave for her first time ever, and she explains, I went to go see her grandmother. Well, the grandmother they haven't talked to in a very long time, and Violet doesn't even remember. So of course she asks, why did you go there? She stopped talking to our parents. Meera explains to her that it was actually the other way around and that she should go visit her. She then tries to offer Meera their dad's books to read. Meera rejects, saying, that sounds awful. Remember, he only left them for you alone, and then she just walks off. And then Andara can't help but chime in and says, that was embarrassing to listen to. Could you make it any more awkward? They're all sleeping now, and then Taryn wakes her up in the middle of the night saying, rise! They wake up to a bunch of soldiers there, and they say, your magic won't help you here, Firebringers. Zaden then gets a dagger to this man's throat and says, that's fine, we brought blades. Everyone else is up now. The guards are backed up into their normal formation, but they brought a whole platoon. I don't know how many that is. That could be 5, 30, or 100. Andara sees the horses and can't help but comment that she definitely could eat one of those. The leader of this group steps up, speaking our character's language, and Dane, who was literally only brought here as a translator, says, I love wasting my time. Zaden says to this guy, we officially request an audience with the queen. They just say to him that the queen does not meet with people unworthy of her presence. And obviously, they aren't worthy since they were so easy to sneak up on. Violet looks at him and goes, we made it easy, but we can make it much more difficult if you would like. And then Taryn is growling behind her. The guard's like, burning us will not grant you access to our queen. He goes, I know, but defeating your best in combat grants us access to your court. The guard is shocked that he knows this, and he just explains that Violet knows the laws. They finally agree that half the group can come, so she picks Zaden, Violet, Dane, Auric, and Kat. Before they leave, she goes to Meera and says, if we're not back by nightfall, burn this whole place to the ground. They get into the temple, but like the first area of the temple because they don't want them that far in the temple because it's a temple, you know? Lots of different layers to this temple, I guess. And then more people walk into this room, and every single one of them has silver, not gray or white hair, silver hair like the ends of Violet's. And then Violet sees a little girl who has the exact same hair as her, where it's half brown on top and then silver at the bottom. And Violet can't help but wonder if that girl is just like her, has the same joint problems, has all the same chronic illnesses that she does. The captain goes off to tell whoever needs to know that they're here. And now there is a group of 3 people in the middle, 2 very large guys, taller than any of our guys, of how they make it sound, and 1 woman who is just as tall as Auric, so 6 feet tall. And then our group is told to pick their strongest warrior. Of course, that's Zaden. They then ask something, which Dane translates as, he asked if he is our champion or our leader. And then Auric butts in saying, close, but no. He actually asked if he is our champion or our prince. Don't be embarrassed. The words sound similar. Auric? What? They all turn on him now like, dude, what the hell? Because seriously, the only reason that Dane is here is because he could translate for them. But Auric just lets them all know that he is basically a master of all the languages they may run across. So now Dane is useless here. I mean, not really, but he is useless. Auric then tries to inform them that he will be the one to fight for them, and our whole group is like, no you won't. You're a first year, and clearly that man is a trained warrior. Auric's like, yeah, well, I'm not my brother. I fight my own battles, and I'm the one who needs to talk with the queen. Luckily, they eventually talked some sense into this guy again, to let Zaden fight as planned. Then the priestess, who is now leading this thing, comes over and also cuts off Dane's uniform, and then comes over to Violet to also get her into the fight. Violet will be fighting the girl, and Zaden and Dane will be fighting the 2 men. And they're doing this because according to the priestess, character is revealed in bloodshed. The priestess then asks Violet if she chose this path herself. She's like, I chose my own life. And then the priestess says, then it's good we didn't complete your dedication. But she is shocked that Violet doesn't yearn for the temple, because normally a touch is enough, and then mentions that Dune would still be happy to accept her. What is going on? What type of cult did you try to join, Violet? And when did you try to join it? The priestess informs them to pick their weapons, but they all have to fight with the same weapons. So Zaden and Dane both agree that they will fight with daggers because that is her best weapon. And now we're fighting. Woo! Dane gets knocked out pretty fast, unfortunately. But our two are still fighting up here. They're doing a great job. Violet eventually gets the person that she's fighting pinned, but Zaden is in trouble at this time, and the girl she has pinned hasn't yielded yet. The girl she has pinned is trying to taunt her on, saying you have to save him or choose to win your own battle, blah, blah, blah. And then Violet, just still having her pinned, pulls out a dagger, flings it at the other guy, lands in his arm, and he goes down. This woman is still not yielding, and Violet screams, yield! And then lightning comes down, destroying part of the room. There's no magic here, so she's like, I guess it's just part of a storm or something. That's so odd. This woman finally yields, and guess what? She's the queen. Violet just beat up the queen. Anyways, the queen's just like, what do you want? Violet explains to her that they are looking for the 7 Freed of Dragons. She's like, yeah, we got no clue where they are. Then she asks them about being allies against the Venin, and the queen says, you can't afford our services. Then she asks how Violet beat her. Violet goes into explaining leverage, yada, 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 and she's like, no. There is no magic here, yet you struck down something that has stood for 700 years. Violet asks again what they want to help them out with the Venin fight, and she says, dragons. Obviously, this doesn't go over well with our dragons or dragon riders, and the queen is confused on why this wouldn't go over well with them, on how she isn't worthy of a dragon when she is a queen. Anyways, they get out of there and don't agree to give them 12 dragon eggs. Once they make it back to camp, she's talking to Meera and is like, when did my hair turn silver?
I apparently imagined saying this in the edit, but Meera just says it grew in that way. I'm so confused on how I didn't say that out loud, because I remember saying it out loud.
But it's like, yeah, of course it did. My parents didn't dedicate me. That would be so silly for me to think that, even though the priestess just said I was dedicated. What? It's all fine, guys. They leave that island, and then after some resting and flying, they make it to the next isle, Hedotis. This is a place of knowledge and peace, and definitely no drama. Andara is instantly like, my kind isn't here, let's go. But she reminds her that they are still looking for a cure for Zaden, so they need to stay and check it out. Our gang is having a little chit-chat on the beach here, and at one point, Kat and Trager are talking. And it's definitely looking like Kat is actually interested in him now. She's finding love. She's moving on. We love to see it. Eventually, Taryn lets Violet know that they have company. Who is this company, you may be asking? Well, the first guy that comes up is one of the leaders of this island, and he introduces himself as Ferris. And then his wife comes up. You want to guess who his wife is? Take one guess on who his wife is. One single guess. Zaden's mother. Yeah, we found Zaden's mom. She's on the island of peace and knowledge. Her son has been fighting for his life, and his mom is just hanging out here on the island of peace and knowledge.
Huh?
I thought she was on some, badass undercover mission, but no! She's lame. Anyways, cut to a little later after that shock. Violet is holding off his mother at their bedroom door, being like, yeah, I'll let Zaden know you invited us to dinner. I'll see what he's up to. Thank you so much. But my priority is Zaden. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know. Priority's him, though, so okay, bye-bye now. Zaden's sitting out on the balcony when she comes and catches up with him, and he hands her the serum and antidote vials that fell out of her pack. He's not upset at all that she brought them. He's actually very happy that she thought ahead and did that. They talk about his mom being here for quite a bit, and how he didn't even know she grew up here. And then they are kind of questioning when Violet's dad had all this time to go to this place and write these books. She's like, so we could go to dinner tonight. He's like, there are far better things we could be doing. They talk and flirt some more, and then we see Kat and Trager down on the beach holding hands. They're holding hands. They're so cute. I love them. They go back to talking about both of their mommy problems now, with her mother being dead and not them ever having a great relationship, and his mother being alive and being a not so great person. Anyways, then 2 little brown-haired boys come running out of the building because Sigale was causing a ruckus, so they wanted to go check it out. And then his mom comes running after these little boys. Those little boys are his brothers. Half-brothers, but they're his brothers. She seriously offers that they just leave right now and is doing everything she can to comfort him right now. But he is now pissed and ready to be petty. So they're going to dinner. She then tells Andara to go follow the boys and find out where they are staying tonight. She is later scheming with Meera and shows her the dried arid mint they brought from Arisha. And they have some devious plan. All right, now skipping to dinner, it's awkward. It's really awkward. The 3 leaders of this area are here. Meera's there, Garrick's there, Violet's there, Kat's there. It's real awkward. His mom is there. I forgot to mention that one. So yeah, this is their test on this island. It's gonna be some logical test, they're pretty sure, but they'll figure it out. It's just kind of happening throughout dinner slowly. Normally, they would do this test in a formal setting, but due to the more delicate nature of this situation, they've decided to do it here. He's like, is that because you're worried I'll embarrass my mother? His mom is like, no, you were always so smart. I would never be worried about that. Then she takes a big old sip of her tea. And then Ferris jumps in being like, do your dragons die when you do? They explain the whole some do, some don't. And then they start going over all the royal lineage in the room. Zaden being a duke, Arik being a prince, Kat being a, I don't know, something in line. Maybe she's a Dutch, I don't know. And then his mom starts asking what happened between him and Kat because clearly they're not together anymore. Kat gets fed up and eventually said, I said yes, he said no, and then he met Violet and now we're fine. And I'm with somebody else now anyways. And then the people at the table start saying stuff about how it's unwise to break off such a powerful alliance. And Zaden just says, unwise? Because then they start talking about writing up a marriage contract for him and Kat. And they're asking, how long should we draw it up for? And he says, draw it up for a lifetime. Anything less is unacceptable. And her full name for the paper is Violet Sorengale, 2 R's. Their group starts joking with them about this and then how they could hyphenate their last names. They're just having a good time. And the other people at the table are still trying to go on, being like, it's only 3 years. And he goes, I will not give up a single day with Violet. And then looking at his mother, he says, and you would know this if you hadn't abandoned me. Then him and his mother argue over whether she should have stayed or not, or if she should have abandoned her child like she did right when war was about to happen. And then one of the people there makes a comment about how this isn't a good look for an interview. I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares at all. Meera snaps, this interview was over before it even began. You discredited all of us. You were never going to share your knowledge or be allies with us. They admit this is true, and then the one called Neera asks Violet what she thinks of their city. She explains that from the air it looks well laid out, but truly it's cruel. They destroyed all the historical significance that had been around generations just to make it slightly more efficient. And also they have no ports, so how are they getting anything? And they go, excuse me, we know nothing about the ocean, so why would we go in there? Honestly, valid point. Ark steps in going over Armoralis stuff, which is the continent's name to everybody else, and their history there, and eventually says, I don't even know if we would want you as allies, since you have no army and you're stingy about giving away your knowledge. And then he reveals that Andara is the 7th breed of dragon, an irid. So, are you interested in forming an alliance now? Everyone of the 3 agrees that maybe they should talk a little. Maybe just a little. Couldn't hurt, could it? And now they just have to convince Ferris. And he asks them, if you truly want knowledge, why do you not worship Riddoc, the god of knowledge? She says to him, I was taught that wisdom is earned, not prayed for. And starts going on this rant about how she couldn't just live on some island while the people she loves were fighting for their lives. While she's doing all this, the chocolate cake is brought out because Zaden's mom remembers that it's his favorite. She's blabbering on as they're serving slices to everybody, saying, it's okay if it's not your favorite anymore, I just did my best, it used to be your favorite, you know? And eventually he says, I still do, and he starts to take a bite. Violet is now thinking through the fact that they have mentioned that chocolate is rare, and that she's been hoarding this chocolate for weeks. They've known they've been coming, which means Ferris knew they would be coming, and he's much more shrewd in his testing. And also, the 4 of them conveniently don't have forks. So Violet lunges, knocks the cake out of Arik's hand, tells Zaden to stop. Luckily, she stops everybody else, well, besides Garrick, who has already shoveled half the cake into his face. And he starts to say, I feel, and then collapses onto the table. Arik catches his head before it just slams into the table, luckily. And then he looks at Zaden saying, he's not breathing. She instantly checks in with Taryn to check with Garrick's dragon, and Taryn informs her that His dragon is still connected with him. Garrick is not dead. Zaden and Auric are doing everything they can for Garrick to get him to breathe, giving him CPR, and Meera is yelling for somebody to get Trager. She's asking Ferris, what did you put in the cake? And of course he's not telling her. She then tries to ask Zaden's mom too, and she's not telling her either because she doesn't know. She didn't know this would happen. She looks just as betrayed as everybody else. And she turns on her husband saying, you poisoned my son? He is now begging Violet to find some way to help Garrick. And Ferris says, is this where you threatened to kill me? Violet's like, no. This is where I tell you I already have. It should start in about 10 minutes. You'll start vomiting, and then your bile will turn into blood. Don't worry, it only lasts for about an hour, and then you die. Then Nero starts throwing up, and she says, oops, I guess my timing was off. They're all confused because they drank and ate everything they did, and she goes, no, you didn't ask what we have before we came down here. Ferris is trying to act all tough, being like, your friend will be dead in 20 minutes. And I'll have time to watch my guards kill you. It finally clicks in Violet's head, who baked the cake, obviously the cook, and then has Riddoc go with her to ask what he put in the cake. They get back to the kitchens, the cook is in the pantry rummaging around, they ask him and he just says, I just put what I was told to put in the cake. They get out, they're looking around now, and then he draws a knife from his knife block. He's charging at Violet, she throws her dagger at him, and it lands right in his forearm because our girl never misses. He drops the kitchen knife and screams. She then looks closer and sees that he was scrubbing blue off his hand. She thought he just had a blue-lined towel, but no, the blue was on his hand, so they at least know a color they're looking for now. And then, from all her father's research that she's read, it clicks. But while all this is happening, another cook comes storming at them with another knife. Violet throws another dagger, embedding this one in the cook's hand, sticking the cook's hand to the door frame. She turns towards Riddoc to see a knife coming out of his side. She's telling him, you're all right, and then he just pulls the knife out. She shouts no as she's lunging toward him, trying to put pressure on this wound. But there's no wound. It's just a cut through his flight jacket. Riddoc is fuming though, because he has 4 uniforms but 1 flight jacket, and now he's gonna have to sew this up, and he hates sewing. And then he turns to Violet saying, I want a patch for this. I want a Quest Squad patch. She just tells him, I know what they put in the cake, and runs back to everybody else. She's telling Auric now that she needs 5 glasses of water, and he runs to go get them. She looks down at Ferris now, who is now vomiting as well, and says, we are fighting a war for the future of the world. It should not be a competition. And he just says, it's your war. And she goes, no, soon it will be yours. You really think the Venin won't come here? There may not be power in the land, but they can drain the power directly from you. Dane had been directed to go get a certain type of fig and make it into a slurry with the water, and now they just have to get it down Garrick's throat, who is passed out. They get some down, he sputters a bit, his eyes flash open but close again, and Violet informs everybody that it could take about 20 minutes for him to fully wake up. After about 3 minutes, Garrick wakes up, and then Zaden goes over to Ferris and punches him in the face, saying, you poisoned him? You tried to poison her? Riddoc steps in saying, hey man, even though they suck, we really can't punch them in the face. Zaden is clearly not all there, that the voices in his head are clearly talking to him right now. And Violet has to do the whole, no, look at me, it's okay, look at me in the eyes, look at me, Zaden, look at me. And of course it works, because it always works. Dane then asks the important question of, is she has a plan on how they're getting off this island? She says, yeah, just make sure everybody is ready to go. Violet is trying to get an alliance out of this leadership, and they threaten to just turn on them as soon as they leave. She goes, no you won't. I mean, you can get your staff to keep quiet about what happened tonight, but you can't get us to keep quiet. And who wants to vote somebody into power of the Island of Knowledge who got tricked by a bunch of 20-year-olds? And then after explaining how she made the poison, she says, now ask me why we're going to be able to fly out of here. He of course asks why, and she says, because you love your sons. I know they were sent out of the house tonight, and I have my little dragon watching them, and she'll stay there until we're out of range of your weaponry. He's like, that's not possible. Somebody would have seen her, and she's like, joke's on you, my dragon's a frickin' chameleon. So they give them the antidote to the poison, and now we cut to them waiting for Andara to fly out of the range of the crossbolts as well. Once Andara rejoins with them, they are headed to Zelina, the Island of Luck. They get there and the humans are waving to them as they land. There is a giant group of people waiting for them in an amphitheater style area. They land in the middle of this amphitheater thing and all the people are of course clapping, cheering, they're so excited. People are running out to inform others that the dragon riders are here. Our whole group agrees that this is weird, but then Taryn asks, do you feel it? And she notices the little trickle of magic. There's not enough to channel or even really properly shield, but it's something. And all the other riders clearly feel it as well because they are are clearly communicating with their dragons or griffins. Oh, and their bond is back too, so they get to check in with each other mentally. He explains that Sigale is yelling at him over every misstep he went over in the past week, then tells her that he needs her to make another promise to him. Please promise me that you will never come between me and somebody else again, like she did with Riddoc, because he was not fully there and he does not want to hurt her. She's like, okay, I'm listening, but I'm still gonna make those calls for myself, okay? Okay, anyways, back to the giant crowd that is just staring at them now. They're welcomed by this girl named Calixta. Violet starts to tell Calixta that they came in hopes of forming an alliance, and this girl already knows. She's like, we've been waiting for you, which I mean is pretty obvious. Turns out Cortland had informed every other island that they were on their way. They then get into wanting to see the queen, blah blah blah, and of course there's another test. Since this is the island for the god of luck, they have to play a little game of luck. They bring out this deck of cards where they will pull a random card that is calling to them. It will be associated with a gift, and then they have to take it no matter what the gift is, with kindness and grace, and say thank you. So basically, suck it up, Buttercup, no whining. Meera goes first, she gets a bottle of wine. Marin gets a couple of orange tunics. Jane pulls the hand card and then gets slapped in the face and then has to say thank you. Garrick gets a rusty steel bucket. Auric gets a fractured hand mirror that immediately cuts his skin. Zaden gets an empty glass box. Violet gets a broken compass, which I mean, we're all in agreement that that compass isn't broken, right? Right? It's gonna be important in book 4. Riddoc, of course, draws the card with lips on it and gets kissed, because who else would draw that card? Cat gets a golden necklace with a giant ruby on it. Drake draws the claw card. They're all really concerned about this until he is given broccoli. This sweet little baby orange cat who is mentioned a few times in this book and we, as the fandom, have clung on to. We love broccoli. Then Trager draws the arrow card and then is shot in the heart with an arrow. That's unfortunate. Yeah. So Violet and Riddoc run over to catch him. Cat runs over and is holding his hand as he dies, and then he is gone, just like that. And then Violet has to get up and say, thank you to the people who just shot her friend in the heart. No one complains. They just have to stand there and let it happen so they can talk to the queen. 8 hours go by. Violet, Meera, Zaden, and Auric all return from talking with the queen. This group of people on this island do not know where the irids are, but they have agreed to send 40,000 troops to Navarre. Kat is saying to everybody that they have to bury Trager and burn the griffin, and that she refuses to leave them, any bit of them, here, because she can't trust that these people won't dig them up to examine their bones. She explains to everybody that they will just have to travel to one of the minor isles that is not populated and do it there. That's a day's flight away. Drake tries to tell her that that's gonna divert the plans. Kat doesn't really care and just says, just pick one and we can get back to all this after. Violet tries to go over and tell her that she is so sorry, and Kat cuts her off saying, don't be. I'm the one who asked him to come. Violet and Zaden are talking for their mental hive mind thing, and she's whining about how she's an awful leader and how she completely froze today when Trager just randomly got shot in the heart. And then she goes into a spiral about how she's always going to end up being a leader because her dragon is a leader of dragonkind, and how she is not worthy of this. And Zaden's like, do you want to try telling that to Taryn? Good luck. They're still talking, and then they are back on finding a cure for him, and she's still really hopeful about it, and he's very realistic and says, there is no cure for me. This is why you have to be better than me. After everybody gets some rest on this island, they fly out to one of the minor isles the next day. And just when she starts panicking that maybe the map is wrong and now they've flown out too far where they can't turn back and find land before all the dragons and griffins crash, they see the island. And it turns out the map was wrong because there really shouldn't be an island right here, but it's here. And it's covered in black sand. And there's a lot more magic here than there was on the other islands. It's still like half the power of Navarre, but it's a lot more than they felt. And then they start the process of burning the respective parties of Trager and his griffin, because they agreed that Trager would like to go with his griffin. A little later, Meera and Drake start bickering over the name of broccoli for the orange kitten. And she's like, why didn't you name it Carrot? And he says, just to annoy you. Anyway, since they've decided that they're in new isles that they know nothing about right now, they've decided to split up for the day into pairs so they can explore all the different isles to make sure Andarna's kind is not here. Kat's like, somebody has to stay here until the fire burns out, and Violet and Riddoc volunteer for that so Andarna can rest a little longer. Zaden, of course, doesn't love the plan of them being separated, but Violet did this because there's magic here, so he's going to be more tempted, and his biggest temptation to use and channel is when she's in danger and he's trying to protect her. So this way, he can't know if she's in danger. They say their I love yous and they part. After Zaden leaves, Violet looks over to Riddoc and Artem, who are in the water, to see that Artem is sending a wave up to Riddoc's shins. And then Artem turns around and is spraying water all over Riddoc. Riddoc calls out to him, "Not fair. I'm still winning, that doesn't count." And then he pauses as if he's listening to his dragon and says, "Because we're on a mission." Violet asks him what all that is about once he comes back over, and he explains that him and his dragon are in a prank war. Riddoc and his dragon are in a mother prank war. They're chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden the ground shudders. There appears to be dragon paw prints, but they can't see any dragons. And these prints are right in front of them. She calls out to Tairn as a dragon reveals itself right in front of her. Actually, 6 dragons. The irids have found them. This is when Andara wakes up from her nap to quite a shock, and then Violet and Riddoc hear this very high whistle sound, and then this random dragon speaks directly to Violet saying, "Hello, human." They're shocked because you're not supposed to be able to hear any other dragons that aren't your own, or unless there's a mated pair or something like that's going on. So she's just stood there in shock. These dragons are questioning their intelligence now because they're not saying anything. And Darna jumps in saying she's just surprised and you're in her face. And then all these dragons respectfully just take a step back. Violet is shocked these dragons can speak their language, and they just explain, "We are magic." And that explains everything. They're magic, okay? Something doesn't make sense? They're magic. Violet at some point unknowingly had drawn out one of her daggers, and they call her rude, and then asked, "Do you really think you could do anything to us with that?" So yeah, she just puts her dagger away. The dragons now turn their attention towards Andara, and they say, "You are an irid." And she goes through a bunch of different colors and says, yes. They're asking her why her resting color is black, and she explains it's an acceptable color in Navarre. One of the dragons call her the Satyrian, and the rest of them flinch and draw back. "We don't know what's really happening. We're just going with the flow. We're all confused right now, okay?" That's what Violet and Riddoc are doing. They're like, "We don't know what's going on, and we're not gonna say anything." Tairn has now landed behind Violet and Riddoc and says, "My human." And Darna jumps in front of him being like, "No, they're my family." And Violet's just thinking, she doesn't know these people. I mean, they might be her family, but she does not know them. These dragons then state they are only here to speak with Darna. And she gets all excited. She's jumping around. She's swishing her tail back and forth. She is a cutie. And this is when the other dragons see her tail and they say, "What have you done to your tail?" And Darna's like, "Nothing. It's a normal tail. I chose it." They're like, "No, it's not. You've made your tail into a sword. Please explain why you chose that." And Darna then starts all the way back from when she was in an egg. So Violet and Riddoc make the wise decision of just sitting down because they're going to be here for a while. And Darna is now going over presentation, and they go, "You present yourself to humans?" And she's like, No. The humans are presenting themselves to us. It's so we can decide if they get to continue on to threshing. She's explaining to them that nobody was able to object to her joining threshing because she's the oldest of her den. One of the dragons shouts out, "You bonded as a juvenile?" Tairn gets offended and says, "You will not raise your voice at her." And Darna then turns on him basically saying, "Be cool, Dad." And then Violet can feel that Tairn is hurt by this. He doesn't want to embarrass her, and he's sad. And Darna then continues on with her story, acting it all out, jumping around, doing all the actions for it. She's just so excited to tell it to them. Get to the part of the story where she's using her juvenile gift for Violet, and they're shocked she would do this. And then she asks them, "Do you bond humans?" Yeah, they don't. They live completely separate from humans. Honestly, wise decision. And also, there are hundreds of irids. Then she gets into the Battle of Resin, and she's describing everything, and then the dragons start flinching back and are horrified, basically, as what she's telling them. And then she finally gets to the point saying, "And that's why we're here, to ask if you'll come home, to fight with us, to see if the knowledge was passed down of how the Venin were defeated during the Great War, or if you know how to cure them. And I like to know my family." One of the dragons turns on Violet and goes, "You allowed her to channel as a juvenile? You took her into war?" Violet can't say anything because these are all things she's thought about herself as well. And she tried to stop Andara, and Andara jumps in now saying, "It was my choice." And then the dragon's asked to see Andarna's wing. It's shaking as she expands it, and she's like, it's just like that because I'm tired from traveling a lot." And one of the dragons say, "We have seen enough." And Darna is rambling now, going on about how her wing is okay and everything's gonna be fine. She's working on it. It's all gonna be fine. They basically tell her to shut up in a polite way, and then they unwhistle sound and talk in private. And Darna looks at Violet now, and Violet just gives her a hopeful smile. But then a moment later, 3 of the dragons launch away, so I don't know if that's a good sign. And Darna asks, "Did I pass my test?" And the whistle sound comes back. So Violet and Riddoc are in on this conversation again. The dragons are confused. They're asking, "Test?" And she's like, "Yeah, to see if I'm good enough to come visit our den?" The dragons say, "You were never the one being tested. She was. Violet's like, hold up, wait, what? And they're saying that Violet has done a horrible job and definitely failed the test. And Andarna's like, no, Violet never failed me. The dragons turn on Andarna now and saying the fact that you defend her actions is a testament to their failure as a society. And Andarna is just standing there shouting at them, she loves me. And they explain, no, she's been using you. She has turned you into a weapon. We are a breed of peace. We left you behind to be a measurement of their growth, their ability to choose tranquility. But they just turned you into another weapon. Then they turn on Terran saying, and dragonkind has learned nothing. You armed your human with lightning. Riddoc has the audacity to jump up and be like, that's not how that works. You know, maybe your dragons are lying to you. Just maybe. The dragons then turn back to Andarna and say, and you, our very hope, have handed this human something far more dangerous, haven't you? Yeah, I would like to know, what is her second signet? Tell me. If you know, can you tell me, please? Okay, they don't tell us here. It's fine. They then tell Andarna she became the very horrors they fled from. Violet then gets up at this point and starts marching forward saying she is not a horror. The Irid just responds, you're right. She is but what you made her. And Andarna is just over there. Her little heart is breaking because she thought she was doing everything right. She thought she found her family. She thought she was going to get to go see the den. And now they're telling her none of that is going to happen. And they're telling her she's a giant disappointment. And Andarna then snaps at them saying, peace requires the Arishan wards, which we cannot fire without one of you. The Irids then say, not our problem. Maybe if some people die, that's okay. Because they're clearly not a good race. And then Zaden and Garrick get back. The Irids are saying they should leave now, but Andarna asks them, is there a cure for the Dark Wielders? The Irids inform them that there is no cure. The power exchange kills the soul, one piece at a time, and death has no cure. Before they leave, Andarna is still trying to get more information out of them if they're the key to ending the war, or just anything. She's like, I can burn them. Surely that means something, and they just call her hopeless. And then another Irid says, we should leave, we have seen enough. The last male Irid says, I have not. Zaden and Garrick finally make it over to them now. Riddoc goes over to them explaining, the best he can, the insanity of the night. I kind of imagine him doing like a little Olaf moment show, you know, from Frozen 2. One of the female Irids that is still there says to her, you are magic, and yet all you seek is violence. And Andarna replies to her saying, you preach peace while only having known its privilege. You are all a disappointment to me. Two of the three that are still there are ready to leave, but that one male Irid is still wanting to hear them out a little more. The females, though, tell her that she is Irid of scale and name alone. Violet can now feel the shame that Andarna is feeling, and so she goes over to her and says, no, you are fierce and smart and brave and loyal. None of this is your fault. You are perfect. The male Irid now asks her, you didn't know she was a juvenile when you bonded her? Violet's like, no. And then they do the whistle thing for Zaden and Garrick to hear as well. And then, all of a sudden, one of the dragons recoils, saying, how could you align yourself with this? And then looking at Zaden says, abomination. And now they're glaring at Sigale, saying, your kind is beyond redemption. The two females leave. Leoan, the last male dragon who wanted to hear them out the most, looks at Zaden and then disappears and flies away. Zaden just says, f***, and then turns around, and Andarna slams her shields up, running into the forest. Terran lets Violet know that he will be watching over her. This is when Riddoc turns to Violet and says, I'm guessing he's why you've been so caught up on finding a cure? Yeah, I saw the red in his eyes. Zaden just says, Riddoc goes, nah, I'm only talking to Violet. And she better tell me what the HECK is going on. Gosh. Okay, sorry, serious. And she better tell me what the hell is going on. Violet is filling in Riddoc on as much as she can before the others get there that don't know Zaden is a Venin yet. Now that everybody else is back, they have to fill in everybody on what just happened. After she's told everybody everything, they make a game plan on how to get home because there's nothing else for them to do here now. They found the Irids, they said no, they got some troops, but besides that, this mission was kind of a big old failure. After all this is settled, her and Riddoc go into the woods to talk. They're in the woods, she is telling him everything as he is just pacing back and forth in front of her. When she's done, he just looks at her and says, I thought we agreed to tell each other the truth. She tries to be like, it wasn't my secret to tell, I had to keep him safe. What if they locked him up like Jack? Riddoc's like, well, maybe he should be. That's why you stepped between us the other day. He wasn't fully in control, was he? She then lists out the few occasions where he has channeled. He's not impressed, saying, he's channeled 3 times, and he starts putting more and more pieces together, saying, this is why you kept Jack Barlow alive. To see if he can give you any information to help Zaden. Who else knows? Zaden, me, Garrick, Bodhi, Imogen. He points out to her, all those people are loyal to Zaden. She's trying to point out to him that Basgaev would have fallen if Zaden wouldn't have turned, so he could defeat the Sage. And he's like, oh died, so he became the very thing we're trying to fight. Good compromise. We now have a dark wielder sitting in the scenario. How can you be sure he's not playing you? She just says, because I know him, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll play along. Let's say he's still 80% Zaden. And she's like, 90. He's like, sure, whatever. How long until he is Asim, which is the next level of Venin, and he can't ignore the calling of his sage. She cuts in saying, well, if he doesn't channel, and he goes, they always channel. I know I crack jokes a lot, but I've been reading the same books you have. There are no accounts of an initiate just walking away from the power. She goes, well, that's why I need to find a cure. He goes, they just said there isn't one. She's like, yeah, I just found that out. I'm still trying to process. Look, Violet does not know what to do right now. She is panicking because she doesn't want to give up on him, the man she loves, and then a strike of lightning goes down on a tree behind Riddoc. He's like, great, now Ryerson's gonna kill me, because he thinks that because the lightning strike happened, he thinks he thinks that Ryerson will think they've been hooking up, which, I mean, really, Riddoc? Really? No. Violet gets back on track of trying to save Zaden. Riddoc's like, okay, then we need to set a line that if he crosses it, you walk away. I'll keep your secret. You can put your faith in him as long as you leave a little logic for yourself. They talk about this for a bit, and eventually they agree that if Zaden ever killed another rider without cause, hurt a civilian, her friends, a dragon, or hurt her, she would end it. Because if he hurts her, he's not him anymore. Riddoc says, cool. Now stop keeping shit to yourself. I'm not having this conversation again. The four of us are stronger together. They're walking back when they run into Zaden, who asks, what have you decided? He says, she tells Jacinia, Ree, and Sawyer. Violet's like, whoa, I did not agree to that. I would prefer Meera and Brennan also, but we can start with the first three. And he explains to Zaden that the reason he wants to do this is that the three people that know besides those two value his life more than hers. Zaden does point out to him that all these people that value his life more than hers, apparently, have told her to run as far as she can. Riddoc says, good, because we need to have all the extra eyes we can on her if you fully progress. He interrupts him saying, when I fully progress. Denial and I don't keep company. Violet's really confused by all of this, but eventually it clicks that they will want to kill him because he will be an insanely powerful Venin, and she will be the easiest way to do that. They're back in the first year situation again. Then Riddoc breaks off and he says, look, that lightning back there, it wasn't what you think. Zaden just says, trust me, I know. He turns to Violet, then turns back to Riddoc, gives him a look up and down and says, it wasn't big enough. I love stupid lines. They all get back to camp, everybody's resting, and then after 10 days, they get back to Deverelli. It's not been a fun travel montage. Cat is depressed. Zaden is keeping his distance from Violet since he's been called an abomination. And Darna's harness broke and they had to fix it, which was just annoying. And after a brief stop at Deverelli, they make it back to Besgaia, finally. They get back and Ree just runs over to Violet and wraps her in the biggest hug, and let me tell you, Violet needed that hug so bad. Riddoc is now telling Ree and Sawyer all about the mission and how Violet kicked a queen's ass, poisoned Zaden's mom, and 3 heads of state. But she did secure an army. They have to fill them in that Trager died. Cat is the one to tell them how it happened. And to add to the happy news, Violet adds that they failed on getting the irids to come and help them, so... uh-oh. Then Atos has to walk over saying that's a disappointment given the current political climate. He then hands her a letter from Theophany. It says, I hope to hear an explanation of this in debrief. This letter kindly says, I do hope you had a marvelous time on your journey. Though your riot looked a little haggard when you flew over Pavis, I do wonder why you went to so much effort when I have the one thing you seek above all else. Do enjoy the time you have with your friends until our next week rendezvous. Don't worry, I'm making all the arrangements. It's her cutesy little stalker again, it's so fun. Atos casually tells them that Sunivia fell to Dark Wielders and that Queen Meera is dead. So now, Dagaris is king. They separate everybody that was on the mission to do separate debriefs, and luckily the king is just so happy that Auric is back that he pardons everybody from any crime or, I don't know, anything they would have done that would have been against codex, crimes, anything. They're all getting off scot-free. Everything is basically back to normal. Ree is catching Violet up on everything she missed, as well as Riddoc, including that the Venin have taken over half of Krovla while they were gone. After going over some other stuff at Battle Brief, they jump into the fall of Sunivia. The Venin dropped out of the sky, started a fire, which basically did most of the work for them, burning most of the citizens to death. There were only 12 wyvern and 12 Venin, and they killed 25,000 people. Everyone is too stunned to even think about how they could have changed the outcome of this battle because so many people in this room have lost friends or family to this battle. Zaden, from the back of the room, asks, "What was in the armory?" Devara's like, normally I let them ask their own questions as the students. He's like, "Yeah, okay, what was in the armory?" There were 6 crates of alloy-hilted daggers, and the Venin took all of them. Those daggers had also only arrived a few hours before the Venin attacked, and it was the first thing they ran to. And then people are asking why were so many daggers there, because normally only 2 crates at most are given to Outpost, but this was supposed to be a distribution center, so that's why there was 6 crates there. Meaning that the Venin somehow know the shipment schedule, so they've got a trader somewhere in the midst. I'm guessing there's a lot of traders, but there is at least one that knows the shipment schedule. Then they go over how they got into the city undetected. They rode in on a storm, which is very common in that area during this time of year. And people are arguing that it's an unnecessary risk with all the lightning in the sky. Violet knows exactly why they were in the clouds. It wasn't a risk. It was because Theophany was there. And she would be, just like Violet, would be able to direct lightning away from the riot. Devera now gets them into discussing which signets would have helped most in this battle to turn it their way. Some people say strong fire wielders to redirect the fire, of course water wielders. Zaden, because his signet is just badass water wielding, basically. His signet can do so much stuff. The shadows would be able to smother the flame. And then Rhys says, Violet. I would send Violet. She could sneak in and take them out if they didn't know she was there, and if they did know, she would just have to be the better lightning wielder. After class, Sawyer is asking her why she would even suggest putting Violet into battle, and she explains it's war. Then she turns the conversation on him and goes, why won't you get back on your dragon? He tries to argue that he can't, and she's like, no, you haven't even tried. And then he says, I won't have my dragon make accommodations for me. He looks over to Violet being a little apologetic about it, and she's like, it's fine. Subject change. Rhee's like, okay. So what's going on with you and Ryerson? Violet kind of tries to brush this off. Riddoc makes a small comment, but they can't openly talk about it yet because they're not in private. And that's exactly why they are going to the archives to get a private room with a sound barrier. As they're walking over, Violet is giving some advice to Sawyer, who has constantly had to have accommodations in her life, and definitely gives him a little more confidence. They all get to their private area, Justinia included, and then she tells everybody that Zaden is slowly turning into a Venin, and then fills them in on everything. That night, she's having another one of her nightmares again. She wakes up from this nightmare and looks over to see the package that Zaden had gotten her that contains a develli silk nightgown, which, as discussed in the last book, is basically completely see-through. There's also a robe, so maybe 2 layers of it will make it not so see-through, but Zaden got it for her, so like... Anyways, she's looking at this, and she's thinking about how much she misses him, and then she gets a pen and paper and starts writing some stuff. Anyways, later on that week, they are working on some fancy new flight maneuver called a battle mount, where they will be wielding and then getting on their dragon right after to get on and off the battlefield as quick as possible. So how it's gonna work, the dragon's gonna fly down, they'll get off the dragon, they'll wield, and then they'll get right back on the dragon. She does all the beginning part, and then Terran sweeps down, grabs her with his talons, and then takes her up into the air. Everybody else has been running onto her dragons, but our girl needs some accommodation, so this is what they do. And then he just throws her up into the sky, and then catches her on his back. After they're done with this flight maneuver training, she goes over to Zaden and gives him this bracelet that she had made out of the stones of the Tyrandor fortress, which is really sweet. She had Bodhi gather them for her, and hands him the letter that she wrote. He's still trying to tell her that he's gonna turn fully one day, and she should run now. She goes, no, you just need to accept that I won't. Then he says, it's been 47 days since I've channeled. I have a number in my mind that I think might indicate stability, but he is not sharing that number yet. It is a secret number. They're done chit-chatting about all that stuff now, so now we get some news on Arisha. And it's pretty bad because wyvern are able to get through the wards and then travel an hour into them. And that's when Felix, who has just been standing there, the other wielding professor besides Carr, says, and that's why I'm here. To train you, because you won't train with Carr, because, you know, he was awful to her. But we need you trained because the wards are going down and it's about to get bad. A little later at lunch that day, a couple people from the scenario come out shouting and fighting, and then Zaden comes out. Because if they're shouting and fighting, let's be honest, Zaden probably caused it. The 2 of them that are shouting and fighting are clearly talking about a border matter. Zaden eventually says, the decision has been made. And then Halden comes out saying, I forbid it. I'm sorry, Halden. You forbid it? Ooh. Yeah, no one likes you. Riddoc is now placing bets on who is going to win between Halden and Zaden. This is his favorite activity. He lives for the drama. He is the gossip girl of Basgaev. He tells them, this discussion is over. And Halden shouts, you will not open your borders. He tries to pull the whole, it'll be my kingdom one day. You have to listen to me, wah, wah, wah. He's like, oh, good, but I rule my province now. So the borders will be open to save the civilians of Dreyfus. And then he basically threatens to kill Halden if he tries to stop him. Which, I mean, it's a normal day in Zaden land. And his reasoning is that Auric will still be alive, so there's still somebody to sit on the throne. Halden tries to act all tough, but then Auric steps in saying, I'm on Zaden's side, and then Halden storms off. Zaden fills the whole squad in at the failing wards at Arisha, and explains that their rotation at the rune class that everybody has been going to. So they've had rune classes where they're just rotating squads that are going to Arisha to take this class and training there as well. So they've been rotating back and forth between Basgaev and this. I believe everybody's just doing like one intensive of a couple weeks to a month there. But he's explaining that they'll be safe, the wards will still be up, and it'll keep them safe while they're there, but they don't know how many more sessions will be able to go on after. And then shadows start to spread across the room, which is weird because Zaden's completely in control, but they're not Zaden's shadows. Lynx, one of the first years in their squad, is panicking as shadows flood out from him. And he doesn't know how to control them. So Zaden goes over there and talks him through everything on how to control them, how to get to this place in his mind to be able to do that. After that, the rest of the squad takes Lynx to Car so he can start training his signet a little and get a hold of it. Violet asks him, how is this possible? You're the shadow wielder of our generation. Mentally, he just says to her, not anymore. Magic knows. He's the balance. My heart. He was so hopeful a little bit ago and now he's accepting his defeat again. This man can't catch a break. He goes back into talking about how dangerous he is and how they shouldn't be together like this anymore. And she goes, no, I won't give up on you. She ends the argument saying, the man I love stays and fights. And he goes, the man you love no longer fully belongs to himself. Leoan comes over after hearing this last little bit, thinking that he's just talking about having to be the Duke of Tyrrendor. And he comes over and he's like, it's hard to date somebody in power, because their attention first has to go to their country, and then themselves, and then maybe you. And she's like, are you telling me I'm a matter of convenience? I mean, Llewellyn, what the hell? I liked you. But Violet just goes, okay, look, buddy. Zaden will always come first to me. I will not morph into the doormat you think he needs. He then says it's the same thing he would say about you. It's what makes your relationship so dangerous. Dangerous. If you're one of us, then roll with us. And now we cut to one of the cutest, sweetest scenes in this entire book, and it is between Violet and Sawyer. And it's Violet just being there to help him as he's learning how to get onto his dragon again with his new prosthetic leg. Sawyer is Hiccup. Character differences, none. I'm just waiting for his dragon to lose a tail part, I guess. I don't know. I don't want that to happen. Seems like we're getting there, though. Anyways, he eventually makes it onto his dragon for the first time again, and he is just sitting up there so happy, smiling, and then the rest of the squad comes up. And Riddoc is so excited. He goes running forward saying, look at you! And then, Sawyer's dragon doesn't appreciate Riddoc running at him, so he growls, and Riddoc backs up saying, look at you! From a distance. It's just a really, really cute scene between our Iron Squad, or our core Iron Squad. I love them. This means everybody in the squad can go to Arisha, so they all fly over there now for their little runes intensive and learning some other classes over there as well. They're all making plans to go to Rhee's family house once everybody gets settled in, and then Violet's just kind of standing there questioning where to go. Since Zaden is here, she doesn't know if she should go sleep in their room, and Bodhi's like, girl, he gonna be more moody if you don't. Go sleep in that room, please. For all of us. He is so grouchy. Violet settles in, she's up there for a little bit, and then eventually there's a knock on the door, and it's Breton. He comes in, he's checking on the sound shield to make sure that's still intact, and then he says, I can't mend him. She's like, what? What do you mean? And then he explains to her that he knows about Zaden, and he's been trying to find a cure or a way to mend him, and it's not possible. And he clearly states they were trying stuff as recent as yesterday, which means he might be grouchy and broody right now, but he hasn't given up on trying. And she can't help but smile because this is her first sign that he hasn't just completely given up. Because to her, It seems like he has. Now we're later in the week. She's in her room again in her cutesy little nightgown that Zaden got her. Then there's a knock at the door, and guess who it is? It is Zaden. He is here. He's not supposed to be here, but he's here. The first thing he says is, "It's only been 73 days. Tell me to go." She's like, "No." And then they start kissing. He is supposed to be somewhere else 9 hours in the other direction of where he flew to get here. But oops, he got here somehow, took a wrong turn, because he was beyond the ward and felt no need to channel. Meaning, he feels like he has full control. He doesn't know if they should wait to do it or not, since it hasn't been that magical number he has in mind, and Violet's like, okay, what is it? And he says 76 days. That's twice as long as Barlow's longest stint. That's the reason he picked it. Barlow is Jack, by the way. But he is confident in himself now, so they get freaky. Anyways, cut to Violet in another nightmare now. She's being held magically by the sage. She can't move. He's saying, "You'll join us." And then she sees her hand in the dream. It's a little weird because it doesn't look like her hand, but she's dreaming, so whatever, you know? And then she's saying things like, "You can't have her," and then she wakes up. When she wakes up, Zaden is also having a nightmare. So she wakes him up and goes, "I was just having a nightmare too." And they start talking about their dreams, and she's talking about how the sage always lifts her up. And then he asks, "Are you sure it's the sage?" She just nods, saying, "He held the sword of Tyrandor to my throat." Yes, it's the sage. She also explains that it seems to be near Dreyfus, which doesn't make sense because she's never been there. His eyes are widening now as he confirms what it actually looks like and then confirms that it is Dreyfus. She goes into tonight's stream a little more, saying that my hand looked different, there was a relic on it. Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, it looked like your hand. And he says, "Yeah, because it is my hand." She goes, "Yeah, that's what I said. It looked like your hand." He says, "No, you were in my dream." And then they spend the next 2 hours talking over every dream she's had. He convinces her that these are really all his dreams, and the thing they want in those dreams is her. Then he asks her if this has happened with anybody else. She's thinking about it. She's like, "No, wait, yes." See, the one dream she had about Kat where she was saying, "I have to save you, you're the Duchess of Tyrandor." She remembers looking at that painting in that dream, and the boys in the painting were Marin's little brothers that she has now met. He explains that, yes, she was in Marin's dream. She's just going, "That's not possible. It's not like we have bonded dragons or anything, or, like, there's no possible way to explain this." He goes, "It's not, unless you're a dreamwalker. That's your second signet." Now, guys, I had a crazy theory about some gravity-ish. That's wrong. But she's a dreamwalker. And I know, it may sound disappointing, but remember that the irids were terrified when they found out that Andara had given her the signet, because Andara already knew. So the irids knew. And they said this is far more dangerous than lightning. I don't know how yet, but just don't be disappointed by it, because I think it's going to be insane once she trains it. Anyway, she's going, "No, there's no such thing as a dreamwalker." And Andara told the irids that she gave me something powerful and terrifying. Zaden explains to her that she's an intensic, which is, in fact, very dangerous. And you don't just read minds, you walk straight into them. No one can shield in their sleep, Violet. She then talks with Andara and Taryn to confirm all of this is right. And now she's thinking through why this would happen, why she would have chosen this signet. Because signets manifest off of something you need or you want as a person. And you know, when Violet wanted to connect with somebody when they were sleeping to find out what they were feeling, it was when Andara was in the deep sleep and wasn't up for weeks or months. She just wanted to know how Andara was, wanting to know that she's safe. So she ended up accidentally manifesting this power onto humans because she can't get into dragons' dreams, clearly. She's trying to brush it off, saying, "It's not that dangerous. I just see people's fears." And he goes, "No, you can also meddle. I wanted to channel in the dream tonight, but you lifted my hand." Then to confirm this, they decide to go to Marin's room. Without telling her anything else, they just ask if she has a family portrait, and she pulls out the one Violet saw in her dream. She's really confused, but they say, "Okay, thanks." They're starting to walk out when Taryn bellows, "Silver one!" Attack bells start ringing, and now a horde is approaching from the east. Yeah, it's a horde of a few dozen wyvern. And he can't even see them all because of the stormy weather. Zaden and Brennan are making battle plans, and of course our squad is like, "Put me in, coach, put me in!" Zaden's like, "Okay, Atos, your wing, your command, go." And look at them. They're starting to trust each other. Bodhi then comes down saying, "I'm joining." Zaden goes, "Absolutely not." And you may be like, why wouldn't he want Bodhi to join? Because Bodhi is the only other one in his bloodline that could take the throne. So since Zaden already may have the Venin problem going on, he doesn't want to risk Bodhi's life, even though Bodhi would like to fight and help. He's very unhappy about this decision, but he walks away. These two say their "I love you" goodbyes, all that good stuff. She then starts walking to the door with Rhi and Kat, and then Auric comes running after her, telling her she needs to go protect the Temple of Dune. She just tells him, okay, if that's our orders, I will. He just goes, no, you have to. She snaps at him, being like, did you make some kind of deal behind my back? I'll be going where I am ordered and nowhere else. They can protect themselves. He's starting again saying no, and she is just walking away now. And he shouts, it's how you save Tyrandor. She looks back just saying, the time to weigh in on strategy was 5 minutes ago. I have orders. Rhi gives the squad the plans. Her and Rhi will be up at 100 feet to fight, and then Riddoc and Sawyer will be below them, covering up to 100 feet and the ground. They get up there, she is flashing her lightning so they can see what's coming for them, and it's pairs of wyvern all going in different paths. This is nothing like how they approached Basgaeaf last year. Somebody got out and knew they had to change the strategy, because them separating makes it much harder for her to take out a bunch of them at a time, because she would have to spread out the bolts of lightning a lot more. Rhi then requests some more light, and Violet sends out a lightning bolt longer than she ever has before. It's still just a few seconds, but that's a very long time to have lightning coming out of your hand. And then it causes thunder, louder than any dragon's roar. And Tyrn is very pleased by this. The wyvern are getting closer now, so she's about to strike, and she checks in with Andarna to make sure Andarna is where she said she would be by the Wardstone, that she's safe there. And all Andarna says is, it's well protected. That doesn't sit right with Violet, but there's a bunch of wyvern coming at her right now, so she doesn't really have a choice. She's just gotta fight, and she can worry about the giant dragon later. They're flying forward, and then a wyvern just flies into them as they're going full speed, stopping all of their momentum, which really hurts Violet. But Tyrn takes care of the wyvern in a second. They go over now to take care of a wyvern near Rhi's dragon. Fergie. Hit it, Fergie. Tyrn grabs the wyvern and starts rolling so he can break its neck. Violet kindly asks him to maybe never do that again, because that hurt her. He just responds saying it was a defensive maneuver. We all know he's gonna do it again. She's now trying to check on Zaden to make sure he's okay, but he has a stone wall up. There's no sense of the bond between them right now. Then Tyrn tells her to look below, and there are 4 wyvern heading straight for the Temple of Dune. But you want to know what they're actually going towards that's right in front of the Temple of Dune? Andarna. Yeah. Tyrn goes into a dive now because they're not letting Andarna get hit by 4 wyverns by herself. Violet concentrates and gets 2 of them down with bolts of lightning. These wyvern are flying fast. Then she sees the other 2 wyvern that she didn't get to kill yet, and Theophany is on top of one of them. Tyrn drops onto the nearest wyvern, and they start spinning again, and all she can see is a flurry of black and gray wings, and then her pain is taken over by Tyrn's pain that she's feeling through the bond. Tyrn skids to a halt in the grass. He's hurting, but the wyvern is dead. He'll be fine. Theophany isn't here yet, but she probably will be soon. But in the meantime, Tyrn's very upset at Andarna, because her not listening to orders almost got him and Violet killed. She's trying to calm them both down now, and then she asks, why are you in front of the Temple of Dune and not at the Wardstone? She simply says, the prince asked us to protect it. She goes, he said that to me, and I said no. And Andarna starts to go on this whole thing of being like, am I not what you want me to be? Tyrn just tells her, now is not the time. Rhi now comes down to check on them. Violet tries to be like, it's fine, everything's fine, go back to the wards where you'll be safe, because they're outside of them right now, clearly. She says, no, and then she uses her signet to pull the giant wyvern thorn that was in Tyrn's leg. She has never done that with something that large before, but she's getting better and better by the day. Then the wyvern starts approaching, Theo with her. She is just trying to get Rhi to go now, to stay safe behind the wards away from Theophany, and Rhi goes, no. She tries to get the priestess and the people of Dune to get inside their temple, and they're not listening either. Everybody is staying to fight, and Violet wants none of them to do that. Violet is getting ready to strike when Theophany cuts in saying, you don't have to hurt me. I can give you what you want speech. And then one of the priestess calls her a heretic. Violet catches this, and then she looks at Theophany again, noticing her tattoos clearly this time, and putting together that Theophany was a priestess of Dune. And I mean, personally, I feel like the silver hair was a dead giveaway, but good job, Violet, you put it together. At this time, 2 more Venin come out, and Andarna decides to hop out and burn them. Except this time, her fire doesn't burn the Venin. And she just cries out, why? Theophany over here starts to say something, and then her eyes go wide, and she tells the other Venin to leave. And all of them disappear, like Garrick did. Like, they went so fast. But there are now still 4 wyvern heading straight for them again. Violet takes another 2 out with her lightning, and the other 2 are coming in fast. She's not going to have enough time to aim and kill them. Even though the Venin are gone, 4 wyvern are still approaching them at a rapid rate. Violet is able to take down one of them, but she's been wielding a lot. She doesn't have the energy or the power to take down the other 3 when they're going that fast. But then, all of a sudden, the other 3 wyvern just drop, and wyvern carcasses are now just skidding and spinning towards them, hitting the temple, and one hits a central pillar, sending rocks flying everywhere. These rocks are coming straight for Violet and other people, but then all of a sudden, they just stop. Zaden's here. He got there before anything bad could happen. They both do a once-over of each other to make sure there's no major injuries. This is when Sigale says to Violet, "You let this happen to him?" Talking about Tarn and the wound on his leg. Turns out they're only here because Sigale felt Tarn's injury through the bond and made Zaden go here. I mean, really, she didn't make him. She just decided they're going. Zaden, he's very glad that she did this because otherwise they would both be dead right now. He explains they were on their way here when the wards went up. She had felt the ripple of magic, but there's nothing to explain why the wards went up. And then they hear that familiar, awful whistle sound. And where darkness was, a moment before, a dragon appears in front of them. Leoan is here again. He just says it seemed necessary to fire your Wardstone. Fergie over here is ready to fight this new dragon until Andara jumps in front of her, being like, no, he's from my lineage. And then Violet gives Ree the quickest rundown possible of the new breed, the irids. She then thanks Leoan, and he says, "I only did this for Andara." It's revealed he's been watching her, and then he starts to judge all of her actions again. Sigale snaps at him, saying, "She is a credit to our riot." He goes, "Yeah, and in the wrong way." Violet has had it now, and she just snaps, saying, "You set her up to fail. What did you think was gonna happen? There is nothing wrong with her. Thank you for what you have done tonight, but do not insult her." Leoan then dismisses everyone except Andara and Violet. Obviously, nobody wants to leave her alone with this random dragon, but they all eventually do. He explains that he didn't agree with the other dragons and he would like to teach her. Only problem is, to do that, Andara would have to go and live with him for years. She just deflates, saying, "I can't leave for years." He says to her, "You can. I fired the Wardstone here so you could know that your human was safe. There is nothing for you here but war and suffering." She explains to him the bond and that they're intertwined. He says, "End it. A bond is merely magic, and you are an irid. You are magic. Bend it, shape it, break it as you see fit." She's just standing here now wondering what the heck is about to happen. And Darna is going, "I can't." He then asks her about who bonded Violet first. Tarn. And Darna didn't speak with her until they got to the flight field. This proves his point, saying, "You already manipulated magic once to bond with her as a second dragon, so do it again." She's now noticing that Andarna is shifting from denial to worry about what it would be like to leave Violet and if she would be safe. He informs her that... Oh, shit. Okay, give me a second. I'll get to what I just thought about in 1 second. He lets her know that her bond with Tarn will be enough for her to live. Then turns to Violet saying, "She is young. You're going to have to let her go." She now turns to Andarna saying, "I love you and I want you to feel complete. I want you to be happy, safe, and thriving. I want you to live even if it's not with me." Andarna starts to say, "I don't know how," and then Violet hears this whistle again. She tries to reach out with her bond for Andarna to finish what they were talking about, but it's not there. Leoan flies off now, leaving Andarna looking at Violet frantically, wondering what just happened. But then she leaves, and Violet's heart is breaking completely. She feels like there is no air, that there is no reason to seek it. She feels completely hollow. Someone is asking her if she's all right, and she doesn't even have the energy to respond. Taryn says, "You will breathe." And all she says is, "She left us. She left us. She left us. She left us." And he goes, "We remain." To make what happened even worse, I now fear that it is foreshadowing what will happen in one of the next 2 books, because he just confirmed that she'll be able to live with only one of her bonded dragons still alive. And if Andarna comes back, I'm crying over a character who hasn't died. I feel like this just confirmed that he's not gonna make it to the end of the series, and I just came to this realization. I had kind of thought maybe that would happen, and now I feel like it's a definite, and I'm so scared. Anyways, back to this current book recap. We have like 4 years before we get to the end of this series, most likely, so it's fine. Okay. Anyways, Violet doesn't leave her room, let alone her bed, for the next 3 days. And she hasn't spoken to anyone. Finally, Meera bursts in, saying, "I didn't fly for the night to watch you sleep. Wake up." Meera works her big sister magic to get Violet out of her bed and start getting cleaned up with the help of Zaden. She says to him, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there to help you with all the border crossings in the last few days." And he goes, "You were breathing. That is enough for me."
Eventually, Zaden runs out to get her uniform and then comes back asking, who's Nara? Because her siblings are fighting about her. So apparently, Lilith's journals are missing a couple months worth of entries. Pages aren't ripped out. She just didn't enter anything for a couple months. And that was during the time that Brennan and Meera were with their grandmother, but Violet wasn't. And when their parents got back, that is when they stopped speaking with their grandmother. And Meera thinks during this time that they took Violet to Dune's temple and had her dedicated, which has been illegal for many, many years. Brennan definitely doesn't think this happened because that's insane. But then some stuff starts to click for Violet. Like when the priestess said, it's good we didn't finish your dedication, and how all the priestesses had silver hair, and there was a girl with half silver hair just like hers. And then the priestess asked her, did you choose this path yourself? As Violet is thinking through all of this, Meera says that she talked to the priestess of Dune here, and this priestess cryptically said, if Violet chose her future poorly, she could still earn their mentorship, but she'd turn. Meera is still continuing on, and then Brennan gestured towards Violet, who is now standing in the doorway. She's just been listening in on all of this. She goes, turn what? Venin? That is correct. She then starts explaining to Meera that she wouldn't have found any records of her at this temple because they took her to the one on the island. Brennan, again, is like, there's no way they would have taken you there. Mom was not temple-minded. She explains, Mom didn't take me there. Dad did. I don't think any of us actually know our parents. She then turns on Meera asking, is this why you've been so distant lately? You think I'm gonna turn Venin? Yes, no, maybe? Violet and Brennan now ask for the exact words the priestess said. She said that the heart that beat for you or within you would do the wrong thing for the right reason, reaching for unspeakable power and turn dark. Brennan now makes her clarify, for her or within her, because it's not the same thing. Meera is still going down this train of thought, thinking that Violet's gonna turn into a Venin, when Zaden steps forward, saying, stop, I'm the one that turned. My heart beats for her. Meera just looks at Zaden, then at Violet, saying, he's not serious, is he? They explain that he's the reason they survived Basgaev and that he's been stable. She doesn't think this makes it any better at all. Zaden quickly reads her intentions and confirms to Violet that she is not planning to tell anyone, though. But Meera is still furious. She's basically saying she has no family here now, and then as she's walking out the door, turns to Brennan saying, good luck keeping her alive. Anyways, cut to a little later that day, I think. Look, Rebecca doesn't give us a lot of timestamps in these books, okay? Anyways, Navarre is ready to declare war on Tyrrendor for opening their border. No big deal. It's mostly because they're defying the Cenarium, but like, who cares? It seems like there may be bigger problems right now, like Venin and Wyvern trying to take over, but if you want to pick this fight, I guess you can. Anyways, Violet is just now back at her normal classes. Her squad is trying their best to get her caught up and get her back adjusted to runes and normal life, but runes are not going well for her because she always used Andarna's powers to make the runes because it was a lot easier, and Terran's power is much more, uncontrolled, I guess? It's a little spastic? I don't know. It's very powerful, rough around the edges, so it's harder to make into a nice, pretty rune. He calls her out for disobeying direct orders, putting civilians at risk. And I'm glad somebody finally called her out for this, because girl does not know how to listen. She tries to argue with him, but he goes, no, Theophany wouldn't have been there if you weren't. She was hunting you. Later, she catches up with Brennan, thinking about how much she likes it here, and that Zaden just seems really happy these past few days. When they're interrupted with Bodhi walking in with Zaden saying, you're an asshole. He goes, that's not new information, but the answer is still no, so stop asking. It's the same argument of Zaden wanting to keep him safe and Bodhi wanting to be able to help out. Bodhi is so committed, he just wants to drop out of school and start in the army now. Bodhi finally snaps during this argument, saying, I am not your backup plan. You are the Duke. I am the rider. If you want somebody from our bloodline in that seat, you better hold your shit together. And then he storms off. And then Violet's heart starts to break because she understands why Zaden has been so peaceful. He's been putting all the pieces together to make sure once something happens to him and he fully turns, it will all be fine here. He comes over to ask her how her day is going, and she also snaps at him. This poor guy cannot catch a break, but she says, is that what you've been doing these past few days, just planning your demise? And then he just starts talking about his day. She mentally to herself goes, okay, I can play this game too, and then starts talking about her day. And at the end of it, she says, are you preparing for your own demise? He admits that he is, but he isn't just embracing the fall. He's not going to waste a single day they still have together. And then they do their normal thing. They bang it out. They have a great time. I'm sure it was a lovely time for them. Anyways, cut to her in another dream, but she knows it's Zaden this time. She is actually able to separate herself from Zaden and be her own person in his dream. As she is watching this go down, the Venin is saying, I'm done waiting. I'm done playing this little game. You may have raised your wards, but that won't save you. We have the advantage, and if you won't deliver her, then she will come herself. Then they wake up, and he was able to see her in his dream, but that doesn't really make sense because Darna's gone, so how does she still have a second signet? But also nobody's ever had a dragon leave and live before, so they're kind of just flying by the seat of their pants. She even tries to ask Taryn, and he goes, I don't know. This is also my first time going through this, okay? And then there's knocking on the door again, because there's always knocking on their door, and it's Garrick, looking like shit. He explains that Theophany blew them out of the sky, and the only reason he was let go was to deliver a message to them. The Venin have reached the walls of Dreyfus, and Theophany said, you have 5 hours to bring Bodhi and Violet or she dies. Zaden asks who. Oh no, I didn't think I was gonna cry. Anyways, Zaden asks who, and then Violet sees the green scale he has. Theophany has Meera. They're all down there together making a battle plan now. Everybody is arguing over what to do because there are hundreds of wyvern and many, many venin, and they don't have enough people to fight that. But Violet isn't paying any attention because Theophany has Meera. Brennan says, we'll be walking into a trap, and she goes, what? We'll be flying, and who said you're coming? He just responds saying, she's my sister too. What they know is that best case scenario, they would be able to save Meera, protect Dreyfus, and defend the pass so people could get out. Violet's saying we can't just leave people to die. And then another argument breaks out between the cadets this time, with Kat being the loudest and Salone charging at someone who made a smart-ass comment, and then Dane is dragging her back by her waist. She is swinging and she spins around and hits him in the face before he grabs her wrist and then leans into her, telling her something. Violet can't hear it, but Salone calms down. Brennan agrees to plan on how to successfully do 2 of these things. The leadership there is saying that no cadet should go. They shouldn't put them at risk. And Garrick is the one to step up saying, let them make their own choice. They're gonna have to live with it. They all agree to only take cadets that volunteer. Then Zaden confirms with Garrick what Theophany said, and what she said was to bring Violet and his brother, which they all know that Zaden and Bodhi grew up together. They're basically brothers. And that she said she would let Dreyfus stand. But Zaden knows that they don't care about lineage there. They're not asking for Bodhi, they're asking for Jack. Everyone is now still throwing out opinions all over the chaos, and Brennan eventually tells everybody to get out besides a select few, and then he turns to Violet being like, pick one objective, because she is counting on you, trying to save everyone, and that is why we'll fail. She then says, I choose to kill Theophany. He goes, that wasn't on my list, but that works. Then he gets everybody moving on the plan. As they're flying over there now, Violet is talking to Taryn saying, Theophany took Meera because of me, and Taryn tells her, you are a lightning wielder, and while your life may not matter more than other riders, your signet does. You are the weapon, and you will have to learn to accept the sacrifice of others in your name, if you want to win this war. And then he warns her that Mulvik has been sighted, Arik's dragon. No first years were supposed to be coming. There's nothing really they can do about it now, though, so they just go where they were supposed to and land. And when they land, they see Tiny under this giant chain net held down by 2 wyvern. And Theophany over here stands in front of it with a blade to Meera's throat. Violet gets down saying, I'm here just like you wanted. Let them go. And of course she doesn't. And then she looks over to only see Zaden, Brennan, and Bodhi. And she says, those are not the brothers I wanted. Violet explains that the one she wanted is on his way. And now Theophany is over here talking about how great a sage she'll be to Violet, all this stuff. Blah, 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 blah. And of course Violet is just there like, I'm not turning. Theophany over here is very confident that she will turn. And now she's taking guesses on what the catalyst will be to cause Violet to reach for the power and channel. Jack gets there now, escorted by guards. And she says, Jack and I are here. Now let Meera and Tiny go. Theophany goes, that wasn't the deal. I said I let Dreyfus stand, not that your sister would live. And then she slits her throat. Violet runs to catch Meera before she falls on the ground. Brennan comes over shouting, move! Violet doesn't even know if this will be possible to mend because most menders wouldn't be able to fix this type of injury. Brennan is talking to himself and Meera saying, come on, come on, come on. And Violet is over there whispering to Malik saying, you can't have her. Then Salone is flying in? And Violet starts panicking again because she doesn't want to lose another Mari sibling in battle. Brennan is just now whispering there's too much damage, and Taryn is warning Violet that Brennan is reaching his limit. Garrick hops on his dragon, speeds away right in front of Dane, who has just got here as well. He didn't know that he could do that before, but I guess he does now. Zaden asks what the hell is he doing here, and he says, I'm here because of her. Gesturing towards Salone as Salone rushes over, saying, Ark told me you would need this. Violet doesn't care about what she brought, but Sloane is a siphon, meaning she would be able to siphon more power from somebody into Brennan, giving him enough power to actually be able to save Meera. And she starts begging Sloane, saying, please. Sloane is just stepping back, saying, I don't know how. Dane rolls up his sleeve and says, try, and starts talking her through it, putting one of her hands on his wrist and then one of her hands on Brennan. Sloane is panicking, and Dane says, eyes here.
Dane, I didn't know you had that energy in you. Okay.
And then he continues saying, you are not a weapon of destruction. You are not a venin. You're the artery power chooses to flow through. You are life. She just says, I'm going to hurt you.
And Dane says, gods, don't I know it.
But you're not going to kill me, no matter how badly you want to. She starts siphoning to Brennan from Dane, and he is able to heal Meera enough where she's steady, enough to get her off of this battlefield and get her back somewhere safe where he can finish this process. Violet tells Dane to go. He stands up, offering a hand to Sloane, and she says, fuck off. I love her. As Dane is leaving, Violet shouts, thank you, and he goes, yeah, just tell me how Garrick was able to move that fast. Then takes Meera, and Zaden turns to Violet saying, I don't want to leave you, but according to the plan, I have to. Violet's just standing there wondering why the heck Auric sent her this package from the Temple of Dune, but that's a later problem. Zaden kisses her goodbye and tells Bodhi to stay with her. But be careful. And Bodhi just says, I don't want your f***ing province. Right after Zaden leaves, Bodhi says, now that the Duke of Angst is gone, we have a problem. See, Meera's dragon is not really waking up. She's alive, but she's not in flying condition. And Garrick won't have enough energy to distance wield her away from here. So Violet reaches out to Taryn being like, take Tiny back to the wards. He's not happy about this, but he agrees to do it, as long as Violet doesn't leave the field they're in. Bodhi and Violet are just chit-chatting until Theo shows up again. Violet is reaching for her power, but there's barely any there because Taryn's far away. Anyways, Theophany is doing a bunch of talking, trying to make them feel less than so they'll channel and become Venin, and they don't. Then the breeze starts to pick up, and Bodhi starts to try to counter her signet so he can get the lightning ability, but the sky is just darkening, so he thinks it's working. And there's humidity coming in, and all of a sudden Violet realizes she has felt this before. Because Theophany is not the answer to her signet, she is the answer to her mother's signet. She is a storm wielder. She tells Bodhi to go and explains that she is not a lightning wielder, she is a storm wielder. And then she grabs her dagger. And not only is Theophany over here a storm wielder, she is a more powerful storm wielder than her mother. She tells Bodhi to go again. He refuses, and then his dragon comes and just plucks him off of the battlefield. This does unfortunately leave a lightningless Violet alone with Theophany. The wind is now picking up, trees are bending. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Theo is taunting her, trying to get her to channel, going into many rants, and eventually has a dagger to her throat. Going into another rant, being like, you're so stubborn, it must be killing you to realize that you don't have all the answers. You're not the solution to every problem. You're just another lightning wielder, mortally incapable of being everywhere at once. She just says, you're right, I can't be everywhere, but I don't have to be. And then thinks, I'm not the best, she is. And then we cut to Rhee's point of view. How did I get here? I'm gonna be honest. Rhee's POV is pretty boring. It's just some basic flight maneuvers. The real reason we're in it is to see that Riddoc successfully freezes a wyvern from the inside out. So he's also able to kill wyvern just by touch now, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they're all doing okay. It's a cute chapter. It's just, it ruined the flow. I'm gonna be honest. Okay, back to Violet. In pure spite, Violet says, my friends will continue to fight long after I have reached Malik, and I'll meet him with my soul intact. Do your worst. Theophany is just realizing that maybe Violet isn't going to turn into a Venin. Violet then smashes her head back into Theophany, breaking her nose, loosening her grip on Violet, and Violet gets away. Violet then grabs another dagger and starts taunting Theophany now, because she knows that she doesn't want to kill her. Making Violet turn would prove that she is a wonderful, all-powerful Venin. Theophany's like, actually that all meant a lot more when you had the irid. And she goes, I might have messed up. Oops. Theophany is going on about how Venin don't really feel love. They feel something that's kind of like it, but it's not love. And so Zaden probably doesn't even really love her anymore. And then she starts channeling from the ground. Slowly. It's not fast like we've seen some Venin do, but she's doing it slow on purpose. As she's doing this, she's asking Violet, do you know how to protect the magic that sustains you? You drain the ground beneath you, so you should probably start doing that. Because that way you'll be able to keep your love, or whatever it masquerades as now. And you'll also be able to keep your dragons if you wish. Violet doesn't channel. Actually what she does is run up on a dead wyvern because there's already no magic there. It's already been drained. And as she's standing there, Taryn comes and grabs her. Wait, actually no, it's Segale. who just says, "You are an inconvenience of which there is no accurate measure for." But she does say that she did a good job keeping the Maven occupied, so that's a big compliment from Sigale. We take what we can get. Sigale's gotta get back to Zaden, so she just drops her, letting Tarn catch her again, and then Tarn catches her with his claws and then throws her back up onto his back. And now they're headed back to the field to finish the job. But Theophany isn't there. She fled with her wyvern south. And she is on top of a wyvern as big as Coda, the biggest black dragon there ever did be. Now, there are a lot of wyverns in between them and Theophany. Even though their orders are just to kill Theophany, they're gonna have to kill some wyvern to get through to her. She takes out a bunch. Eventually, she has to slow down so she doesn't burn out, but then she hears wing beats behind her, and it's Moldic, Ark's dragon with Ark on his back. Tarn lets her know that the spare, Ark, has brought the advance party from Zilina, the Island of Luck. He's brought at least 20 troops from the Island of Luck. Oh, and cool, we're getting settled back into Violet's chapter. Psych! Imogen's turn! Where is she? Imogen's chapter! It consists of a lot of banter between her and her dragon and how many kills she has. And eventually she sees a Venin heading towards the tower that Quinn is in, so she starts running over there to help Quinn. As she's running over there, Dane is also now running with her. And then a Venin starts using his fire signet at them. She takes Dane's shield and says, "Get behind me," and then turns the shield into stone, protecting both of them. After the fire stop, Dane pops up, throws a dagger at the Venin, killing it. As she gets to the turret, she hears Kroof roar, Quinn's dragon. And there's two women running out saying, "You have to help her!" Imogen shouts at them, telling them to go west. Imogen gets in there and sees three Quinns. Remember, she has astral projection as her signet, so she can just project other images of herself or other people. So Imogen just assumes she's somewhere safe and will be able to take care of this Venin easily. Until one of the projections starts to move closer to the Venin. At the same time that Imogen throws her dagger, Quinn lunges for the Venin, and the Venin turns around, and Imogen sees the Venin die. Imogen says, "Got him," and is ready to celebrate with Quinn until she sees that there is a dagger in her ribs, lodged near her heart. Imogen runs over to catch her, just saying, "No, no!" And Quinn just asks if they got out. She confirms that the women did make it out. She's just telling Quinn to hold on, saying, "We're going to get you help." She is screaming at her dragon in her mind to get her help, only for her dragon to say, "I am sorry." Quinn tells her, "There's no helping me." And then she asks Imogen, who she calls Jen, to tell Jax, her girlfriend, or fiance actually, ask Jen to tell Jax that she loves her. She's still in denial, saying, "No, tell her when you graduate in a couple months, and then you can marry her with that black dress you picked out." And asks her again to just tell her and adds more onto this list, and of course Imogen will. She also lets her know to tell her parents that this was worth it, and then she tells Imogen, "I'm sorry I have to go first this time. You should tell him, and find some happy too." She means for Imogen to tell Garrick about her feelings for him. Imogen is tearing up, saying, "Please don't leave, you're my best friend, I love you." Quinn says, "You're mine, and I love you too." And then her smile falls, and she just says, "I'm scared." She's talking her through it, saying, "My mom and sister will find you. They'll be so excited to meet you. My sister always wanted a little sister. They'll know who you are." Why does this happen? And then she says, "We made it a good one." And then she's gone. Oh, I noted in here that I was crying writing this, and I couldn't see the screen and to send help. So, again, crying multiple times over one scene. Imogen just lets out this awful scream and then remembers their first day they met at the parapet. And then she sends us into this little memory, which is just so sweet. "Hi, I'm Quinn Hollis. I've decided we should be friends." That's what she said to me as we climbed the turret on conscription day. "You do realize we're about to cross the walkway of death. Well then, it might be a short friendship, but we'll make it a good one." Oh my gosh. Someone is calling for Quinn. Imogen doesn't know who. And then she sees Garrick and he just says, "Oh, All Imogen says is she's dead as tears just stream down her face. Garrick says, "We have to go," and she refuses to leave Quinn's body here. So Garrick just simply picks them both up and carries them to a safe place, where Trissa is, the rune instructor, who is making a lot of runes right now. But they need more power to imbue them. But Garrick is all out. So he walks out, trying to find another way to help. Imogen tells Glenn to get every rider over here, and that this is the only way they make it through this. They don't really explain what the runes are, but it's the only way they make it through this. They need to imbue them. And then, in Imogen's POV, the sky starts to darken. Cut back to Violet. After the emotional trauma. Violet is now chasing Theophany, trying to hit her with lightning, but she is dodging all of them. And Theophany is making all sorts of storm stuff happen. Hail, rain, tornadoes. Aw, yay! And this causes Violet to break her conduit, which is what she's been using to help her channel her power. I don't really understand it. Not a lot of people do, but it's been doing something. Violet is starting to near burnout, and this is when Theophany starts taking the storm away to make it harder for Violet to wield. Taryn then cries out for Sigale. It sounds like she's been injured. We don't find out though, because there is a net thrown on Taryn and he is sent to the ground. They make a not so graceful landing at least. It's more of a crash landing, but it's a landing. They don't die. Violet just breaks her arm horribly. So, as Theophany is coming closer, Taryn is covered in a net, Violet is nearing burnout, her conduit is broken, and her dagger is also broken. Luckily, she brought some runes in case of an emergency, and this for sure counts as one. She then looks at the package that Auric had gotten delivered to her, and it says, "For when you lose yours." She opens it to find a brand new dagger with a little letter. "Strike in the dark, Violet." She's wondering how the hell he knew that her dagger would break, but she doesn't have a lot of time to think about that right now, because Theophany's here. Violet gets off Taryn, cutting the rope as she goes down his leg. Theophany muses on how easy it was to bring down the pair of them, meaning Sigale and Taryn. Violet opens up her power again, trying to strike Theophany, but Theophany is already 20 feet away by the time the lightning gets down. And with every failed attempt like this, Theophany is just moving closer and closer to Taryn. Taryn informs Violet that he is almost free of the net, though. Violet knows she needs to distract Theophany and throw her off, so she asks, "Do you miss Unbriel?" He startles at this, so she continues saying, "Do you not yearn for temple?" Theophany then asks her the same thing, but is wondering that since she was only touched, not dedicated, to the temple if she doesn't feel it. Violet, then taking control again, asks her, "Why would you leave? As a high priestess, you would have had immeasurable power." Theophany then says, "Why serve a god when you can be one?" Then she gets straight fear coming through the bond, hears a roar from Taryn, and sees shadows encircling the field. At a speed Zaden would only be able to accomplish if he was channeling from the ground. She whispers an "I love you" down the bond, not sure if he'll be able to hear it, and then sees a shadow throw Theophany back. Shadows have completely flooded them, they can't see anything, and Taryn orders her to strike and use the darkness. And this is when she remembers Auric's note saying "strike in the darkness," and all the pieces click into place. Because Auric is a precog. Not just like his father, who can see the outcome of battles, he is a true precog. He can see the future. Meaning he saw all of this happen, so he sent a dagger made out of the temple that Theophany is not allowed to step back into. Violet takes out the dagger and then starts lighting up this area with an extended strike of lightning. Theophany sees Violet, so she dives left, only to run into a wall that starts growling. That's right, Andara's back! Her scales start to turn this silvery blue as she stalks forward towards Theophany. Theophany starts reaching out a hand towards Andara, and Violet's like, "Oh, hell no," and starts sprinting towards Theophany, landing the dagger directly in her heart. She starts staggering backwards, laughing, thinking this dagger can't hurt her, and then she sees the blood, and she topples onto her knees. Violet explains, "You were never just Venin. Dune is a rueful goddess to high priestesses who turn their back on her." Theophany dies. Violet releases the bolt of lightning she had been using to light up the area, and then she starts to feel like she is on fire. Burnout. And before she passes out, all she hears is Andara saying, "Violet." Now Zaden POV. Cut back in time a little bit. Zaden is there. Sigale is down, covered with a net as well. He is furious, but no, Taryn and Violet can still get out. There are no Venin standing guard. He would have no problem rescuing Sigale. But the one Venin walking towards Panchek, one of the colonels, who was a traitor. But the other one is the problem, because he's not only supposed to be dead, but Zaden can't kill him, just like he wouldn't be able to kill Violet. Or Bruin, his sage, which apparently they can't kill their sages. Which means they probably just got this new Venin to use against him. Panchek is mad, saying this isn't what we agreed to because his own dragon is netted, but Zaden can't even focus on that. He's just focused on finding a way to save Sigale. She is telling him to not lose himself, and he says there is no other way. Panchek keeps arguing, and then Bruin, the sage, just kills Panchek's dragon, and then taunts Zaden, saying he could kill Sigale. And then Zaden lets loose. Sigale is saying, "Do not do this to save me." He just thinks, "Do it? It is already done." This is when all the shadows start going over, everything starts to grow dark, and when Violet starts to have her fight with Theophany. He has knocked out his teacher, Sigale is free now, and they start scheming. She is obviously not happy though, but puts that aside for now. Apparently, this plan all revolves around Violet, and this determines their fate. We don't get to know what the plan is, but what we do get is this, back to Violet's POV, where she wakes up and Brennan is shouting for her as he runs down the fortress's steps. And Andara is saying, "I will not let them burn you." Violet is completely confused and has no clue how she got here. Outside of the fortress at 3 a.m. with Brennan running towards her, asking where she has been. And Imogen is just standing beside her. And she repeats all of this back to Brennan. There's a man behind Brennan with a report, and he says to tell them. Official numbers are 4 riders, their dragons, and 3 elders murdered in the valley, and what we're estimating in the last few hours. And we still have 5 riders missing. 4 now, says looking at Violet. But after that display, we all know Ryerson did this. I bet the other 3 are already dead. The wards are holding in Dreyfus as of the last report, but who knows how many of these desiccations during the battle were actually him. And so far, the tally is at 6 missing eggs from the hatching grounds, but they're double checking. Yeah, missing eggs. Dragon eggs. After the missing egg part, she reaches out to Tarn, but Andara just tells her he needs a cycle of rest to recover. Now. I know he was injured, but I fear this means he needs a cycle of rest to recover from her breaking his bond to Sigale. Because she is magic. She's able to do this. She's already bended bonds twice. And if Sigale and Tarn were going to be separated for that long, their bond would need to be broken. Anyways, that's a problem to deal with later and cry about. Brennan tells this guy that he is dismissed. The guy tries to say something about Violet being the fastest way to find him, and Brennan just repeats, "You are dismissed." He then turns to Violet asking, "Do you know where he is?" She's got no clue though, she is just as confused. He then asks Imogen, and she says she hasn't seen him since yesterday. Imogen then asks about Garrick, and Brennan confirms that he is also missing. Then Brennan does a double take of Violet's hand. She then looks down to see a beautiful golden emerald ring on the finger, the ring finger. And she knows the stone because it matches the one that's missing on the blade of Arisha. Violet asks out loud, what is happening right now? Brennan is just confused on how she doesn't know and then asks her if he can read the paper that's in her pocket. She tries to reach out for Zaden's bond now, but there is nothing. He may just be too far away though. After reading the paper, he says, this is a legal binding of your marriage by the head priestess of the Dune Temple. They got married? And she doesn't remember? Give me 1 second. Well, oh my gosh. She's wondering how she doesn't remember this happening, as we all are. He hands it back saying, I think the note is meant for you. The note just says, don't look for me. It's yours now. She then asks how long she's been missing, and he confirms it's been 12 hours. She now snaps her head towards Imogen, asking, what did you do? And all Imogen says is, what you asked me to. The end. Yeah, that's actually the last line in the book. You want to see the meanest thing? It goes all the way to the very end of the page, so you figure there's going to be a little more. No, blank acknowledgements. I'm still not over that ending. So why doesn't Violet remember any of this? Imogen's signet is to erase memories, short-term memories at least of what we know. So she would be able to erase all the memories in the last 12 hours that Violet had. Apparently there was some plan about her getting married, and now she's the Duchess of Tyrandor and rules it? Is in charge. She's on the scenarium. Sigale's gone, Zaden's gone, Garrick's gone, Bodhi may be gone, Arc's gone, eggs are gone. And let me tell you the few things I think this means. I think that Garrick turned into a Venin because in an interview, Rebecca said it was somebody who needed more power. And when is the last time we saw Garrick? When he was completely out of power, he couldn't do anything. So he channeled. We also know there's a brother, which may be Garrick, but also it's because the brother is supposed to be dead. I don't really understand that part. I don't think it's Liam. I feel like I'm missing something there. Maybe it's Liam, but that doesn't really make sense because they burned him. Anyways, I think Garrick also became a Venin. Bodhi might have as well, but I don't think so. I think he's still there. Arc is the one I think that went off to go take the eggs to trade with the other kingdom to bring more army and support because he saw in his precog ways that they would need it. And then Imogen's just here to, I don't know, help Violet get her memories back at some point maybe? Who knows? Who knows? It's the end of another book and Zaden has left us with the biggest cliffhanger possible. Rebecca is wisely taking some time off. She's gonna spend time with her family, which I know she needs, but also that means we're probably waiting about 2 years for a book because she's going to write a contemporary romance before she writes the next one in this series. It's gonna be a minute. We did get a fun little kitty cat character. We love Broccoli, and that's the best thing. And, oh, this is fun. Real fast. This is so fun. I get to end this by saying, Dane doesn't suck anymore. I actually really like his character now. I was starting to like him last time, but I just didn't like Iron Flame enough to really forgive him, and that was two. I want a novella of Dane and Salone so bad. Okay. Our sweet baby Andara is back. It's all okay in the world. There's death and destruction and people missing everywhere, but Andara's here, so it's fine, guys. Anyways. All I can suggest to do for the next 2 years is scroll through fan theories on TikTok. We are going to come up with the most insane ones ever. And with all that being said, I guess I will see y'all in the next video. So please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see y'all next time, and bye, y'all.